president walks in, I'll give an indication so we could stand up until they are seated, and once they are seated, everybody else will get seated and we'll start the program. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so it's okay. You'll remain standing whilst we welcome the panel. I said I was going to give a signal, but since you have given me the signal, I will acknowledge that. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, may you all stand up to welcome the high panel led by the former President, Kgalema Motlanthe, and the Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, Honorable Linteng Begwe. Thank you very much. We may be seated.
Good morning. Dumelang. Molweni. Sanbonani. Goeiemôre. Goeiemôre. Pragtig. Thank you very much. My name is Thulani Chefuta, one of the panel members. I have been sent by my elders to run the proceedings of the program today. And we are members of the high-level panel under the leadership of the chairperson of the high-level panel, President Kgalema Motlanthe. Let's welcome him. We also have Dr. Klasin as one of the members of the panel. We have Dr. Olive Shisana. We have Professor Hesh, Reverend Damon, Professor Molitsane, Dr. Yvonne Muthian, and of course myself, Thulani Chefuta. At this point, I would love to invite the Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature to come and welcome us so that we start in earnest. Let's welcome the Speaker. Sis Ntombi Mekgwe. Now let's welcome her into the stage.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good morning to all. His Excellency, our Chairperson of the High Panel, Honorable Kgalema Motlanthe, Presiding Officers of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, members of the Provincial Legislature, members of the High Level Panel, the people of Gauteng were indeed blessed this morning, because when the panel comes to Gauteng, we're blessed with the rain. So thank you very much. It shows that whatever deliberations that we're going to have, they are going to be very fruitful. Rain is a sign of hope, and rain is a sign of good things to come. It is indeed my honor and privilege to welcome you to Gauteng Province on the occasion of the High Panel public hearings hosted by the Provincial Legislature and the National Assembly, working with the National Council of Provinces. I also wish to take this moment to extend a special word of welcome to our esteemed former President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Honorable Kgalema Motlanthe, and your team, our distinguished panel. It is in the nature of the arrangements of our constitutional democracy that parliaments or legislatures are the foremost institution tasked with the eminent role of lawmaking. This is not to negate the important role played by both the executive as well as the judiciary in the same space. It is therefore fitting that the public hearings on the assessment of key legislation and acceleration of fundamental change are taking place at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, which is a place where public representatives exhaust all efforts in the attempt to work with the people to resolve our common challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, at the core of all that which the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa mandates both the National Parliament and legislatures alike is the people. The understanding of the centrality of the people in discharging our responsibilities as public representatives, public servants, and the judicial officers, either through oversight over the executive, lawmaking, and the provision of public services, is sacrosanct. Our Constitution, through the Bill of Rights, amongst others, seeks to protect the people's fundamental rights, including the preservation of their human dignity. It enjoins us to do so by guaranteeing, within the constraints of limited resources, the enjoyment of socio-economic rights by the people. Accordingly, everything that we do, in particular the pieces of legislation passed by Parliament, should accord with the letter and spirit of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, thus aiding a forward movement towards improving the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. The work of the High Panel offers us an opportunity to reflect on the work we have done over the past 4 legislative terms, starting from 1994, with the aim of gaining a better insight on the shortcomings of our legislative framework. This will enable us to correct our course and legislate better going forward in the context of the type of a nation we seek to build. The Gauteng Provincial Legislature, in the previous legislative term of office, undertook a study on the efficacy of laws passed since 1994, akin to the work which is ably led by Honorable Motlanthe. We thus hope that the results of that work will be of great use to His Excellency and the panel. We welcome the visionary leadership of the National Speakers Forum, which is led by Mama Balega Mbete, for initiating this work. As a people, we undoubtedly stand to benefit immensely from the outcome of this particular effort. Let me again thank all of you for attending this important session in our province and wish you everything of the best in our endeavors, but also ensuring that as we conclude the work that needs to be done, we'll be able as public representatives, as lawmakers, to ensure that we improve in terms of the laws that must actually impact positively in the lives of our people and bring a better quality of life for our citizens in Gauteng in particular, but also in South Africa. I wish to thank you and welcome in Gauteng as we start these deliberations this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for welcoming all of us. We can now be at ease, take off our jackets, wear our thinking caps, and ready ourselves for deliberations. I would just like to make few announcements. The first one is that we do have interpretation services. We have interpretation in English, in Sesotho, isiZulu, isiXhosa, Tshivenda, and Sepedi. Those who need interpretation devices can get them at the corner at the back. But you need to have your ID so that you give them your ID and then you take the interpretation device. I will give you the channels in which language do you get in which channel. So those who need the interpretation services or devices can actually go now and get those. And second to that, we also wish to announce that anyone in the House can express themselves in the language of their preference because we have those interpretation devices. And that as we continue, the experience we have in other provinces is that time runs out very quickly. And so if there are things that you would want to raise, I suggest you start noting them down. And if you don't have an opportunity to address them here, you can submit them into the tables that we have. So those who need the interpretation devices are allowed to access them. At this point, I wish to thank the Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature for welcoming us and the entire leadership that is with her. And I would love us to join hands in welcoming the Chairperson of the high-level panel, President Kgalema Motlanthe, to come and address us.
Molweni, Sanbonan, Dumelang, Goeiemorgen, Abusheni, Dimadegwane. Mine is to give you a brief background as to why this panel was established. The fourth parliament, which ended in 2014, in its legacy report, at the end of each term, each parliament compiles what we call a legacy report. And in its legacy report, it identified the need for assessing legislation in terms of its content, in terms of efficacy, in terms of impact. And therefore, the fifth parliament, which was sworn in 2014, in looking through this legacy report of the fourth parliament, identified the need for assessing impact of legislation, and in its strategic plan decided that the best way to tackle this task of assessing impact of legislation was through an independent high-level panel. And so in December of 2015, the Speakers Forum established this high-level panel, which consists of 17 members, And the panel was then mandated to assess impact of legislation in 4 focus areas. The first of these focus areas is how legislation impacts on poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And the second area of focus is creation of and equitable distribution of wealth. And the third area of focus is the land question. Restitution, redistribution, all aspects relating to the land question. And the fourth area of focus is nation building and social cohesion or social exclusion. And so the panel, having assessed the mammoth task, decided that the 2 first areas of focus, which is poverty, unemployment, and inequality, as well as creation of and distribution of wealth, could be combined. And so the panel divided itself into 3 working groups. Working group 1 focuses on the 2 areas of focus, and working group 2 focuses on the land question, and working group 3 focuses on nation building and social cohesion. The methodology used by the panel includes calling for written submissions, inviting stakeholders, South African citizens, organized formations to submit written, proposals or areas where they feel that either there's too much legislation or legislation leaves gaps that impact negatively on the lives of our people. And the panel also works with researchers based at universities. It also had to interact with Chapter 9 institutions to access their reports because they have to deal with, impact of legislation on communities on an ongoing basis. And so this outreach program is part of the methodology of affording South Africans the opportunity to share with the panel how their lives are impacted upon by legislation. Some people will say, well, we don't get a sense that we are a free people because every effort is thwarted by too many regulations or legislation. And others will say legislation is not precise enough to address our concerns. But we want to afford you this opportunity today. As I understand it, today's session will cover 3 areas. In other words, people who come from the West Rand, people who come from the South, people who come from Ekurhuleni will participate today. We will be here tomorrow also to interact with more of our people, and we hope that going by the experience we've gained, we've already been to the Eastern Cape, to the Northern Cape, to the Free State, to KZN, and so today we are, and tomorrow we'll be here in Gauteng. Our approach is that we need you to say to us what you feel, how legislation has, affected your lives or your endeavors, be it negative or positive. We want you to share that with us. Our only plea would be that you should go straight to the point. The preambles and perorations and all of that, where we will have time for that next time. For now, we are keen to hear from you very directly. Remember here, you must speak your mind freely, without fear or favor, without buying anybody's face. But just share with us how legislation impacts on your life or your endeavors. With these few words, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you and to say to you that we want to have a very candid discussions. We are here to listen more than to talk. We follow a simple guide that, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth. So we will speak less and listen more to what you have to say to us. We will be taking copious notes. We'll record the inputs that you share with us, and we hope that you will not be inhibited by any protocol issues. You will just speak to us as candidly as you possibly can. With these few words, I want to thank you and once again welcome you to this outreach program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the high-level panel. In the interpretation devices, for those who want to listen to English, it's on channel 1. Sesotho is on channel 2. isiZulu on channel 3, isiXhosa on channel 4, Chivenda in channel 5, and Sepedi in channel 6. How we are going to proceed with our program is that we have brief presentations from the working groups of the high-level panel. The 3 working groups are designed or aligned according to how we have structured ourselves, as the chairperson was saying. So we have a working group which looks into the economy primarily. We have a working group that looks into land as working group 2. We have a working group 3 which looks into nation building and social cohesion. So we will take those presentations back to back. They are very brief. After which there are organizations that have expressed interest of making inputs in line with those working groups. They will be allowed to make those inputs. After which we shall open it for anyone and everyone from any of the regions that we have here to raise their issues. So that is the program that we are going to follow. And at this point, I want to start by inviting Dr. Olive Shisana to come and make a presentation on behalf of Working Group 1. The presentation will focus on the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, and wealth. Let's welcome her.
Good morning. Abshen Sanibonani Dumelang. Slide 1 will kind of give you the key areas of focus for this particular working group. The working group is focusing a lot more on growth, poverty, and inequality. In this particular component, we have a number of areas we are looking at. The topical issue of wage inequality, of wealth distribution and inequality, of labor regulatory environment, of unemployment, and also on poverty and access to basic services. We then will go into the area of unequal access to quality health care. That is what this working group is focusing on. It also focuses on quality education, spatial inequality, as well as skills development. On the next slide, we begin to look at the question of statistics with regard to unemployment. I'm aware of the fact that there are new figures and I'll address them immediately after this one. When we look at the slide that's in front of us, it's clear that unofficial employment in the country is on the rise. And it was quite high in the first quarter of this year, 26.7%, meaning that 5.7 million people were without jobs, were unemployed. And the challenges obviously are also gender related in the sense that females were less likely to be employed compared to men. We're talking about a percentage of about 4.7% difference. And when we look at it in terms of expanded unemployment, meaning that we include those people who were available to find a job but were discouraged, the figure was quite high at 36.3%, meaning that about close to 9 million people were unemployed during that particular period. And of course, gender differences on that slide are much, much higher. You can see that it's a 7.3% difference. Now we come to the next slide on the hard facts on unemployment. The unemployment rate is very, very high now at 27.1% of the labor force. They couldn't find a job. And if you look at quarter one of 2016, we found that unemployment is very, very chronic in the sense that 65% of those people who were unemployed have been unemployed for more than a year. And a third of the youth aged 15 to 24 were not in employment, were not in education or training. But the other thing I want to mention, which is very important, is that of the unemployed, 71% are youth aged 15 and 34 years, meaning that this is a big problem really among the young people. On the next slide, we look at poverty in South Africa. We take into account the fact that our country is a middle-income country, and yet it has a very high level of poverty. The recent report of the National Minimum Wage says, and I quote, of a total population of 56 million people, 29.7 million lived on less than 1,036 rand per month in 2016. Furthermore, nearly 12 million people live below the food poverty line of 445 rand per month. Hence, we have seen the recommendation that has come up of a minimum wage of 3,500 per month, which obviously is still subject to consultation. We generally agree that the main reason for poverty in South Africa is actually unemployment, but it's more than that. Obviously, there's a question of asset ownership. On the next slide, we try to address the question of inequality in South Africa. And from the data that is available from the World Bank and other sources, clearly there's an indication that South Africa is one of the most unequal societies in the world. If you look at that slide, we are worse off in terms of inequality than countries such as Haiti, Colombia, Paraguay, Brazil, Panama, and you could go on and on and on. Even among those BRICS countries that are our partners in the middle-income countries, you see that we're now really the most unequal society in the world. On the next slide, you'll see that inequality remains a challenge, especially in terms, if you look at the annual household income, and you look at that by population group, in other words, the race of the head of the household. And if you look at them, you see that since 2001 and up to 2011, there's been a slight change in terms of income. It has risen from about 48,000 to 103,000 for the total population. But when you start looking at that data by race, you basically see that the biggest beneficiaries in terms of annual household income are whites, and the least beneficiaries are Africans. You can see that difference of 22,000 having increased from 22,000 to 60,000 for Africans. But when you look at it for whites, you're talking about from 193,000 to about 365,000 gain over that decade. On the next slide, we talk about unequal wealth distribution. We know that South Africa is known for its extreme income inequality, as I've just shown you. But something that has just come up from the data that came in from Treasury, which was analyzed by Stellenbosch, using their personal income tax data of more than 1.3 million people, it shows clearly that the degree of wealth inequality is even greater than the degree of income inequality. That new tax survey data suggests that 10% of the population own at least 90 to 95% of all assets, in contrast to their earning only of about 55 to 60% of all the income. So, which implies that we need to begin to think about the tax reforms to say how should we be taxing those who have resources in order to reduce the wealth inequalities. There are key questions that we need to answer on the next slide. Have we, as a country, done enough to reduce poverty and inequality? What more could we have done, or what more should we have done? But to answer that question, we basically need to ask ourselves some of the questions, and hopefully you can help us answer these questions. Have the strategies we have used been effective? Have the strategies we have used had unintended consequences that have made it even harder to reduce poverty and inequality or reduce the rate of growth? Or is our tax structure correct? Are we taxing people correctly? Now I come into another presentation on the question of spatial inequality. That slide basically shows you very clearly the inequalities in terms of where people live. The people in Alexander are sitting very close to Sandton, which is the richest part of South Africa. And the people in Alexander are very, very poor, crammed in a very, very small place. We also see the same thing with Alexander when you look at it against Casey Park. You can see the cramped spaces where they live. In the Western Cape, when you look at the Hout Bay versus Imzama Yethu, the wealthy are living in nice green places with a lot of space, and the poor are crammed up in a very, very tiny, tiny part. These are the legacies of apartheid that needs to be addressed by changing the spatial distribution of settlement in our country. On the next slide, we look at the spatial inequality, which essentially affects employment. From the recent report that has come up on the National Minimum Wage report, it says that the job seekers are spending on average 105 Rand each week traveling to search for work. This is equivalent to 25% of their weekly salary for a full-time employee earning the minimum wage among the lowest existing sectoral determinants. Obviously, such high costs may discourage the unemployed from actively searching for jobs, resulting in unemployment. Let's look at the laws that exist that are supposed to address the question of equality on the next slide. In terms of the South African Constitution, equality is listed as a non-derogable right, meaning that it's a right that cannot be violated under any circumstances. So the law is there. And to give effect to that constitutional imperative, there is a legislative framework that is in force that is underpinned by two statutes. The first one being Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, what is called the PEDUDA, and the second one being the Employment Equity Act. In addition to these laws, there are instruments that are facilitating equality, and this includes the South African Human Rights Commission, the Commission for the Gender Equality, and the Commission for Employment Equity, as well as the Equality Courts. However, despite all of that, on the next slide, it shows that we still have persistent inequality, and it manifests itself in terms of class, race, gender, and space. The share of employed persons with tertiary education, for example, varies very much by race. For the whites, it's 47.3%, and you compare that to the Africans, it's 13.3%. And that comes in from the data that was released by Statistics South Africa yesterday. Another startling finding is the fact that executive directors in South Africa earn on average 21 times more than the average employees. And if you take into account the bonuses, it rises to 36%. And again, this comes in from the Statistics South Africa Q2 report of 2015. So these are some of the problems. In terms of spatial inequality, the employment losses have occurred very much in the third quarter in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Northwest, and the Free State. The rest of the others have seen a slight increase in terms of employment. So we come into the next slide, still addressing the question of employment equity legislation. Now, the purpose of that legislation is to achieve equity in the workplace using two major approaches. The first one being promoting equal opportunity and fair treatment in employment through the elimination of unfair discrimination. And the second one is implementing affirmative action, which is meant to redress the disadvantage in employment. Let us look at the next slide, which talks about the Commission for Employment Equity. What has it found with regard to implementation of this legislation? This is a statutory body that is established to monitor the implementation of employment equity and to advise the minister. In its 16th CEE report launched in April this year, it reveals some very worrying findings that in terms of the top management positions, whites occupy 69% of the position, which is more than 6 times their economically active population. The Africans occupy 14.3% and the coloreds 4.7%, and both of these are underrepresented in the employment equity programs. While steady progress has been made in the public sector, the private sector seems to be reluctant to comply with the law, despite the sanctions such as fines that are being imposed by the Labor Court for non-compliance. We have to think twice as to what do we need to do beyond the law to be able to get people to comply. And of course, when it comes to the question of disabilities, there is a big problem in the sense that we are seeing a decrease in the representations of persons with disabilities. Coming to the next slide, we look at the laws that are passed to address that inequality in the workplace, but we do see that the results are basically showing that the distribution is disproportionate. Now I come to the next slide, which addresses the question of skills gaps. Skills are critical in terms of growing the economy, and we know our economy has not been growing. So there is a need for us to begin to look at seriously as how we can close the gaps in the skills levels, especially that we are seeing that over time, the gaps have been growing instead of narrowing. Here we see that in 1994, the highly skilled Black Africans constituted 15%. By 2014, that has changed only to 18%. Now, for the white population, we've seen a big increase from 42% to 61% over the same period between 1994 and 2014. Those are the major challenges that we are seeing. But one of the reasons why things are the way they are is the problem of education. 51% of our labor supply has completed matric, and we're talking about 2016. That is a challenge. Then come to the question of education. Our constitution states very clearly that everyone has a right to basic education, including adult basic education, and to further education, which the state, through reasonable measures, must make progressively available and accessible. That is the chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights. The national unrest that you have seen at universities, tertiary institutions, universities, with students demanding free education and no fee increases, is an indication of the fact that the Constitution has been violated. Should free education be made available to all those who come from families earning more than 600,000 rand per year, as proposed? That is something that you can argue. But some people might say, well, we are having progressive realization of this right by simply saying that, start with those people that are very poor and over time increase that to make sure that those that get to about 600,000 should continue to be able to pay. Well, there are problems. The question is, should there be a law that requires prepayment for quality education by all, similar to those laws on universal health cover? We should ask ourselves those questions. But we must also take into account the quality issues. The next slide shows that throughput rates are very, very bad in the country. In the next slide, please. 25% of students in contact universities graduate in the prescribed time. You can look at it for all those areas of engineering, science, diploma, and all of those, and commerce. You can see basically that once the student enters the university, they don't come out in the prescribed time. They stay longer than they should, and we should take that into account as we discuss the question of free education. In terms of free education for who, we need to be looking at that very carefully. The problem starts very much at basic education. When we look at the basic education and we look at it in terms of the quintiles, in other words, those that are very poor, living in poor schools compared to those that are very well-to-do schools, you can see that those who enter grade 3, many of them, 90% of them, are not functioning at the level of grade 3. Only 10% of them are functioning at the level of grade 3. But for those that are very wealthy, that are in the wealthy areas like quintile 5, half of them are actually functioning at grade 3 level. That's still not good enough. So our education system is a big problem. And the next slide actually shows that overall, if you look at it overall, only the top 16% of grade 3 students are performing at grade 3 level. So our education system is in a crisis, and something does need to be done, and we need to think about what exactly should we be doing as a country together from a legislative point of view. On the next slide, we're addressing the question of national health insurance as a means to reduce inequality. The NHI is supposed to eliminate disparities in financing the public and private healthcare system. Unfortunately, the public healthcare system is in crisis because it's underfunded, undercapacitated, and it lacks sufficient infrastructure to deliver healthcare to the majority of the population who are poor. The private sector, on the other hand, is very well endowed with resources, with half of the national expenditure devoted to serve 20% of the population who are economically well off. That's huge inequalities. NHI, according to the white paper, is also based on the principle of social solidarity that implies that cross-subsidization of the poor by the well-off, the old by the young, the sick by the healthy. Given the history of this country's racial divides, and which currently is experiencing socio-economic divides, the social cohesion that we're seeing as a problem, it is necessary that the NHI be based on this principle of solidarity in order to promote social cohesion. Still on NHI, on the next slide, the NHI will probably significantly reduce inequity because the poor tend to postpone seeking needed health care while the rich tend to overuse the services. The affluent 20% receive 36% of healthcare benefits while their need is very low at 10%. The poorest 20% receive only 13% of the healthcare benefits while they have a greater need of 25%. Therefore, the proposal in the white paper is free healthcare should be free at the point of care for all that who actually need it in order to reduce disparities. The last slide on NHI talks about South Africa needing a national health insurance that is based on a single payer model that integrates the public and private sector health facilities and provides universal coverage regardless of the ability to pay, regardless of race, age, sex, and geographic location. South Africa needs a healthcare system that is fair and sustainable, and the current model is clearly not. Legislation is needed to introduce NHI so that it can reduce inequality. Finally, we are requesting you to share your lived experiences related to the impact of laws on the quality of your life. Assist us in identifying strengths and weaknesses in the current laws. Please make submissions on how laws can be improved to create jobs, to allow greater access to services, and to address current inequalities. I'd like to thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shisana. There's a little bit of sabotage here, but we should be through now. Is this one on? Well, the purpose of these presentations is to give us baseline information on the status quo. And now we invite Dr. Claessens to give us a presentation on the land question. Let's welcome him.
So we're really grateful that people have come, and we're really hoping to hear your views and your experience about what is working in relation to land reform and what is not working. The working group on land reform focuses on three main issues. The first is whether the provisions of the Constitution in relation to land reform are being adequately enforced and upheld. And there we have the right to restitution. If you lost land, we have the right of equitable access to land to deal with the consequences of dispossession. And we have the right to tenure security for all the people whose tenure security was undermined by past racially discriminatory laws. So that applies to people in the cities, on the farms, in the shacklands, in the communal areas. So the one question is, are those provisions that promise land reform in the Constitution adequately enforced, and are they effective? The next is about, does land reform address the legacy of racial inequality, the legacy of dispossession that was done specifically in relation to denying black people land rights? And then the last major question is, does land reform currently address the legacy of dispossession, the legacy of poverty and inequality, which Dr. Shisana has outlined? So Working Group 2 has had various focus groups and roundtables looking at the social, economic, and political significance of the land question. We've also looked at land redistribution, what's working, what's not working, land tenure reform, which is the rights of people on the farms, labor tenants, in communal areas, in the shacklands, around the cities. And we've also looked really at the question of who owns the land in communal areas. Is it the people who have lived on it for generations, or is it traditional leaders? So we look there at the interface between land rights and laws such as the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework Act. We also look at what is happening in mining affected areas and whether people's land rights are being adequately upheld in those areas, and whether they are able to enforce their land rights and get a fair share of what happens from mining deals on communal land. Then we look at land restitution. As we know, there's a right to restitution it's in the Constitution. It's also in the 1994 Land Restitution Act, which was amended in 2014, but that amendment has been struck down by the Constitutional Court. So we want to hear from you, what is your experience with land restitution? What is working, what is not working? Are your claims being processed? And are you enjoying the fruits of the land? And then agrarian reform and rural development. What's happening when you get the land back? Are people able to use the land productively? What support do you get in relation to farming? And how are black farmers doing on land that they've got through land reform? And then we also look at the issue of spatial inequality, as Dr. Shisana has outlined, and the kind of legacy of spatial inequality, both in the cities, but also in relation to the former homelands, the concentration of poverty in those areas compared with the rest of South Africa. So what we're hoping is that in relation to the framework for inputs, that people will talk about their experience with land redistribution and land restitution, and talk about whether that is adequately addressing the legacy of racial inequality and also the legacy of poverty and dispossession. So we hope that you will tell us about your experiences with both restitution and redistribution. And we would really appreciate it if you could give us practical examples and case studies based on your real life experience. And then we look at tenure insecurity. As we know, the Constitution says that if your rights to land are insecure because of past racial discriminatory practices that prohibited people from owning land in the cities or owning land in communal areas, how is your tenure being secured in the present? So what is people's experience living on the farms? What is your experience coming from communal areas or the former homelands? And what is the experience of people living in the cities and in informal settlements? Are your land rights secure? Are they under threat? Are there other laws that are undermining your land rights? Not just land reform laws, but other laws perhaps dealing with mining or traditional leadership. Then we have a focus on sustainable livelihoods and rural development. And what we want to understand here is what's happening on land reform land. How are people able to use the land? What support mechanisms do they get? And to tell us what are the laws and other factors that influence whether you can use land, whether it's to do with water or minerals or spatial planning. We want to understand what are the factors that make farming possible and what are the factors that undermine farming. And then really the last question there is, what is land reform doing in the context of the alleviation of poverty and inequality and employment and social cohesion? How have these laws worked to address dispossession and inequality? Where have they failed? Where have they succeeded? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And we'd like your practical suggestions for the way forward. So finally, we want to know in what ways has the implementation of the post-1994 land reform laws helped, assisted land redistribution and restitution? Have the laws been successful in addressing the legacy of racial discrimination? What improvements do you suggest? Have the post-1994 laws, policies, and programs decreased poverty and inequality? If so, how? If not, why not? And what changes are necessary? Have the tenure security laws been successful in stopping evictions and providing people with legally enforceable rights to land? If so, how have they helped? We'd love to hear case studies of positive experiences of land reform. If not, why not? And in your view, what changes are necessary? Have the laws, policies, and programs enabled black farmers to use the land productively in ways that improve livelihoods and spread growth amongst families and whole communities? If so, how? If not, why not? And what changes are necessary? And then finally, we want to know what are the strengths and what are the gaps in current law and policy, because our mandate is to recommend whether certain laws need to be repealed or amended or other laws be introduced. So we're hoping to hear from you based on your lived experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Klassen. We have now been joined right on time by Judge Pillay, who will be leading with the delivery of the presentation on behalf of Working Group 3, which group focuses on nation building and social cohesion. Let's welcome her for arriving and welcome her into the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by apologizing and explaining why I was late. I was in Norway and arrived yesterday. And it's interesting to see Norway as a good example of social cohesion and nation building. They have a lot of money from their gas wells. But the people have decided that that money must be used for the future generation. So you look around and you see that everything looks so poor. The buildings have not been done up. And they don't have rich and poor. They have only one class in the railway station, one class for everybody to travel. And when I asked people about this, they said it's the public decision that that money must be used for the good of their future generation. And I thought I'll share this with you because it's such a good example of the strong values on the people that controls the government and controls against corruption, stealing, and so on. So I'm very happy to speak for the working group on nation building and social cohesion. And let's look at our constitution. What does it promise us? In the preamble, it says, heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people, and every citizen is equally protected by the law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person and build a united and democratic South Africa in the family of nations. So what then is the problem? After 22 years of democracy, we still have challenges of social cohesion and nation building. We can say that ethnic-based conflict is high. There are tensions between us and foreign communities. There is a great deal of domestic violence, violence against women and children, and we are divided by race and by class, by rich and poor. So then we have a particular focus for social cohesion, and we ask the question, what binds us together as a community? Practices found in the laws, customs, traditions, the practices amongst us as a people, these can either divide us or they can bring us together, they can bind us. So on social cohesion, the questions we would like you to help us with is, which customs or practices divide us as communities? And which customs or practices build us as communities? How can we create solidarity amongst ourselves? Will it be through social organizations, churches, NGOs? You may have other suggestions, so please share them with us. Now, the thematic focus of our group is we looking at policies in government, policies in municipalities, and we ask the question, are we all treated equally? We look at the programs that improve the quality of our lives, including service delivery in health, education, food, water, power, housing, and safety. So here again, we are here to hear your views on whether the delivery of these policies and services impact on the way we can build our nation. And as I said, nation building. What binds us as a nation? The common vision, values, traditions, customs, practices that help to build us as a diverse South African nation that creates national pride, including sport, cultural events, national symbols, national holidays. So really, we're very interested in your suggestions on how we can get there. Now, looking at all the legislations or key legislations that were passed after 1994, we would really like to hear your views on which laws do you think assist us in uniting as communities, uniting as a nation, and which laws or policies do you think divide us as communities and as a nation? Which policies or law or acts of government or municipalities build us as communities or as a nation, and which policies and acts of governments or municipalities divide us as communities and as a nation? So still on all the laws that were passed since 1994, what role do you think parliaments should play, the parliament should play in building us as communities and as a nation? So I'm sure you have many ideas with regard to that. We look forward to hearing from you on the laws and activities of parliaments and municipalities. So as we start to collect your views on social cohesion and nation building, let us remember this statement from our leader Nelson Mandela, who said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his or her skin, or his or her background, or his or her religion. People must learn to hate. And if they learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." So that's a good beginning for us to consider all your views and submissions on this particular subject. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much once more, Judge Pillay. We shall now invite organizations as organized groupings that have expressed interest of making brief inputs into these presentations, so that after which we will open it for everyone who has an input to make. Just for the purposes of organizing ourselves, we shall start with those who expressed interest of making inputs on Working Group 1, which deals with growth in the economy, triple challenges, and wealth. I want to check first if Shadrach Mbondomsa is here from the HRDC. It seems you are not ready. You are invited to make your input. You did not. Thank you very much. I also have here the president of Sangoko. I have seen him here. You are invited, President, to come and address us. All organizations that are invited have 5 minutes to make their presentations. You can come. As the chairperson of the high-level panel said, preambles, introductions can be in the submission. But for now, we are asking for specific recommendations that different organizations are making. And we also request that with every presentation that is made, you please leave us a copy of the presentation, even if it is handwritten. Thank you very much. Over to you, President.
Thank you very much, the chairperson of these proceedings. Good morning to the stakeholders that are here today. A special thanks to the high-level panel for making it possible to invite critical stakeholders in the country. Members from different community-based organizations that are here, traditional leaders, the media. Good morning, everyone. Chair, I will speak from my heart. I've made presentation. We will provide submission to the panel. But I think it's important that I speak from my heart, because today in our country, after 22 years of democracy, different pieces of legislation has been formulated that deal precisely with the issue of poverty, the issue of social inequality, the issue of unemployment. But still, we find ourselves in a crisis. Poverty is still rife in our community. Why? Why are people still living in abject poverty with a good government in place, with good laws that are there to enable that the country indeed foster? Youth is still unemployed. We've heard and seen the presentation by Dr. Olive Chishana to indicate clearly that the youth unemployment statistics are still growing. 2 days from today, the State of South Africa released a quarterly report which paints a bleak picture of increasing levels of poverty in our country. Why? On Sunday, we've listened to Deputy President Ramaphosa producing a report that talks on a proposal for national minimum wage of 20 rand an hour. Is that what our country needs? Is that what ordinary people demand in this country? Is 3,500 a decent and living wage for our people? The answer is no. The answer is no. The wage inequality, the domestic as well, people that are working on farms, is still a problem. We've got good policies that are there in place, but why? The gap between the rich and the poor is widening. But why? Why? The poor remain poor. Social protection is increasing. As a fact, people are living on social grants provided by our government. Is that how our people should live in this country? And the question is definitely not no, not that way. So, Chair, really, after 22 years of democracy, the impact of this key legislation, they have never done any mark in changing the livelihood of our people. We need to come with aggressive policies that will indeed change the livelihood of our people, not cosmetic pieces of legislation. On the issue of employment equity legislation, in Western Cape, they're doing it the other way around. The tourism and hospitality sector, they're employing more foreign national. Foreign nationals are preferred. If you go to any hotel in Western Cape, you find foreign nationals. The locals, where are the locals? Why? Why is Western Cape doing it differently? Why there's no conformity from the Western Cape on national legislative framework? We've spoken about the issue of mining company. Gold and platinum houses that are sitting here down at our doorstep. What are we doing about those mining houses? What effect are they doing in changing the livelihood of our people? Those companies, you find them in Marikana, in Northwest. What are they doing? On the issue of education, what are they doing in ensuring that they indeed assist government? In the past, 10 years back, Sangoko proposed for basic income grant in our country. And today, we're going to present to the platform basic income grant on extractive industries. Because we view the extractive industries, as a resource to our country that can alleviate poverty in certain areas, in certain aspects of where our people will be required. So yes, policies have been put in place, but the impact of them in changing the livelihood of our people, it leaves much to be desired. And one of the critical issues that must be addressed is the issue of ensuring that government, business, labor, and community organization, they revisit the social contract. At NEDLEC, it should be revisited at NEDLEC, because it is there that concrete proposal of shaping the trajectory of our country will come up and be realized. So with those few words, we want to present a position that says that after 22 years of democracy, our people are still experiencing challenges of the triple challenge of poverty, social inequality, and unemployment. And we are saying, going forward, we must assist our government. We must come up with concrete proposals. And government this time must listen to those proposals so that we shape the direction of the country. Because our people, the way that they are living, the conditions that they are living, it cannot be for us to look at them in that way. We must rise against that and ensure that indeed we help our people. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are making the recordings of the proceedings. And we are also taking notes, as you can see. And you can present in any way and share with us the copy of the presentation that you have made. Our next presenter will be Ms. Nombuyiselo Skosana. Is she here? Please. And on working group 1, I would also like to have Sipho Madela from Ekurhuleni ready, Victor Jabane from West Rand ready, and Thando Makhubu from Citybeng ready. If they can come closer so that we reduce the time in between the speakers.
Sanbonani, thanda ukubonga kuwe mgcini sihlalo, Babo Mhlante, nakuwe mphathi wohlelo, nabakhapheli bakhe. Bese ngibonga abantu bonke abakhona endlini. Igama uNombuyiselo Skosana, EMD Loginex Investments. Ngizothanda ukukhuluma ngesintu ngikhulume okusenhlizweni njengobaba the previous speaker. Ingqinamba esibhekene nazo singama South Africans zintathu. Eyokuqala eyezimali, eyesibili eyokuphatha, that is ownership. Eyesithathu, it is the market. Uma sesinama business sithengisa kuphi. Singakakutholi futhi lokho, singaba nayo imithetho imigomo esiyenzayo. Kodwa uma singekakutholi kuloko kuthathu, akakabi bikho la sisazoya khona. Sisamele sicele ngoba akusikho ukuthi asinakho. Sinakho. Sithathe kuma traditional initiatives ethu, iitokvel, ama societies. Okunye sinokucela kwesinye isikhathi sinokucela kanti lokho esikucelayo siyazilimaza futhi thina. Ngizokhuluma nge-FSB, which is the Financial Service Board. Mayizokunika FSP number. When this board was established, eqaleni yayiqaliswe ekutheni izokwenza iformalize omashonisa bethu kuze bangahlukumezi abantu. Yayingekho before. Kodwa ukuza kwayo ukuthi sicela ukuthi kube ne-regulatory system komashonisa. I-end up is deprive thina futhi siyabantu. Because ku-FSB, when you get the FSP number, awuyitholi nje this FSP number kube ukuthi usungenile kwezomkhakha wemali. Kunama chambers within the FSB board that denies a black person to grow within the financial sector. Uyayithola kuneyimali okufuneka ungene ngazo. Ekuqaleni kwakumele ukuthi ube nama members awu 250 before you can qualify to get an FSP number. Akusikho ukuthi asikhona bantu bakithi sinakho. Kodwa le regulatory system iyona esibulalayo. Iyona esenza futhi ukuthi namhlanje le ngqinamba esibhekene nazo, the triple challenge okukhulunywa ngayo, which is inequality, poverty and lentos. Yes. Zontathu lezo zinto lezo singakwazi ukuthi sizilungise ingoba asikakabi nezimali zethu, asikaka own okukwethu thina, whether kukumhlaba noma kukuma business asikakangeni. Lama businesses now, most of us are entrepreneurs, And being a tenderpreneur doesn't mean you are in business. Because once you don't get that tender, you're no longer in business. Okunye futhi, thina sizibulala thina singabantu abamnyama. Ingane zethu zihlupheka namhlanje zingenayo imisebenzi. Akusingoba umuntu omnyama engenalo ikhono. Ukuthi asikakayithembi sisazithuka okokuqala. Futhi sibukelana phansi singabantu abamnyama. Uma ngisebenza kuwena, I will not dedicate myself as much as I dedicate myself ngisebenzela umlungu noma India. Singekakulungisi lokho, akho la sizoya khona. Because each and every company stands with an effort from kubasebenzi bayo. Manje uma thina uzothi umusebenzela mina, ubona ukuthi kumele ungene ngesikhathi osithandayo, usebenze ngendlela othanda ngayo, uchayise ngendlela othanda ngayo, inkampani izoya kuphi? Number one. Number two, black companies have got an opportunity for people, for us there to grow and for our children to get jobs from those companies. Because all Old Mutual, all clientele, they didn't start as big as they are. They started somewhere in a small office until we learned that as black people, then we will understand we are not different from any other person. Our traditional initiatives today, zisnikezani kwi-investment ye-insurance, ama-funeral covers. Can we really say, ma umuntu omnyama, you will save your money every month ukuthi ubhadale i-funeral cover just for ukuthi uthole a luxury funeral at the end of the day, rather than building a future ezokwazi ukuthi kwakhe ikwenze ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi uzondle, ukwazi futhi ukuthi ufundise ingane zakho. Masingabheka into yezitokfela, sibheke into yama-societies. It shows ukuthi whatever initiative that we come up with, it is worth our lives. It is worth growing us and upgrading us and empowering us to be equal to white competitors out there. We will grow as much as they have grown, because the process that they've gone through, it is the same process that we will go through. The first thing that we need to do as black people is to first identify who we are. We need to find our pride. If we don't have pride, you will never have or grow from where you are. I always have 4 principles in life. The first one is pride. The second one is depth. The third one is a disc. And the fourth one is wisdom. I will describe shortly how I analyze a pride. A pride, to me, the word pride stands for, P stands for me as a person. If I cannot identify who I am and show and stand up and be proud of the person that I am, if I still, as a person, try and identify somebody, ngiyaxolisa kini bosisi ngoba kakhulu yithina bosisi, ufune ukubleacha isikhumba sakho, ufune ukufaka inwele zabelungu nezamandiya, then that means you haven't found who you are. Who you are portraying, it is not you. It is that white person who is there and that Indian woman who is there. And the question of poverty, we are not really poor. Black people are not poor. We just mismanage our funds. If you can say you're poor, but a kanda ugogi Brazilian hair, you 3,000 rands, then that means you haven't understood how to invest your money better. And when you talk about investment, we're not talking about money that we take to the stock exchange. Investment begins at home. Teaching your child ukuthi matholi 10 cent, 5 cent eyakhe, 5 cent eyokuthi uyisave. If we can start by saving and identifying our needs, then we will know how to use that money. I will make an example. Uhulumeni khona manje usakhela ama-RDP houses, angithi? Uthathi RDP house le akwakhela yona ukuthi ibe yisekelo sokuthi ibe impilo yakho kise phambili. Uyithathe uyithengisele umuntu wangaphandle. Usho ukuthini washo njalo? Okunye singamblame ugovernment, kodwa nathi siyabantu fuze siziblame. Sizifune ukuthi singobani. AS2 uR respect. Ungakwazi ukuzihlonipha wena. Expecta kanjani ukuthi omunye umuntu olunye uhlobo akwazi ukuthi respect. I is for integrity. Uma ungenaso isidima, ungenaso isizotha wena ngokwakho, uthi ubani akunike sona. And then dignity. If you don't see dignity in yourself, uzokwazi ukuthi uqhoma umkhukhu next to iJaskei River. What are you saying, honestly? What are you really saying? Is there no better place that you can build a house or a shack rather than to build a house next to a river? Uzosixakekisa mase kuvela ikhukhula. Khona manje ingane na 3 years, angithi? Ihambe ngamanzi. Ubaba wayehleli naye esihlahleni. Ibizosinda kanjani le ngane kulezi ikhukhula? The last one is excellent. That is pride. If you don't have those things with you, then you are nothing. Honestly, I'm sorry, but you are nothing. The second one is depth. Depth is devotion. E is enthusiasm. Uma ungenalo ugqozi, usahleli, ungakwazi ukuzikhuthaza wena, ubani uzokukhuthaza? Uma ungenayo purpose in life, uma ungenayo tenacity, ungena hope umuntu, kusho ukuthi uyafana nomufi olele lapha emathuneni. And then disc, this is a very important one, because once you've identified the 2 principles that I've mentioned, this one is the one that is a starting wheel in you, which is accountability. We talk of corruption within government structures. They lack accountability if they are corrupt. Number 2, it is discipline. Once ungenayo discipline, ngizoyenza umzekelo nje. Uma uzokwazi ukuthi uspend imali etavern every day, at the end of the week, uphume so interview ku TV, umuhle ngaleso sikhathi umugqokile u3,000 rand or 4,000 rand, kodwa uthi anginakudla endlini. Ngempela abantu bakithi. Eyesithathu, it is initiative. Yebo siyahlupheka. Kodwa wena, uma uwena, yini ozenzela wena umuntu uqala? Inhlonipho yokuqala iqala kuwena, kuwe. Nga-anduba uyithole komunye umuntu. Esine Okunye ku a disc is sacrifice. Ebomini you need to sacrifice. You need ukuthi ukwazi ukubopha ibhandi. Okugcina i-commitment. Uma ungenayo i-commitment bantu bakithi. Thatha nje ku society. Ingani uyazi ukuthi every month kumele ube nawo 200 to contribute ku stokvel or society. Angithi? That is commitment number 1. And then eyogcina, it is wisdom. Ngicela ukusho ke leyo yokugcina. Ngiyazi ukuthi ngiyanikhathaza kodwa ngicela ukuyisho. It is the will to do whatever you want to do. Elandelayo innovation. Ngisachaza wisdom. Just 1 minute, please. Ngiyazi ukuthi esikhathini esiningi senza kanje kodwa siluze lokho okubalekile ebekufanele sikutholile. Kodwa ngizothanda ukuthi ngibonge khona lokho ukuthi ningimamele. Kodwa ke bantu basekhaya siyakhona singaphumelela singaya phambili. Enama companies abantu abamnyama yiwona azokwazi ukupha ingane zethu imisebenzi. Ake siwasupporteni sibe behind them 100%. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very much. Is Sipho Madela here? I requested Sipho Madela, Victor Jabane, and Thando Makubu. Where are they? They must please come. Where is Sipho Madela? Where is Sipho Madela?
All right. Right. I'm on. Okay. Yeah. Yo. Salmonani. Dumelang. Ndi macheloni. Good morning, good people. First, greetings to the Honorable, our former Deputy President Ubaba Kgalema Motlanthe, no Mama Umehwe, ne high-level panel. First of all, igama lami nguSipho Madela, ngiphuma ekuruleni. I'm a person living with disability. I'm a person living with visual impairment, meaning I'm totally blind. Ningamangali uma umuntu angithatha ngileta stage. First and foremost, I came here to address the challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. I'll be brief. Angifuni ukuthi abantu abangaboni babe a bad example bakhuluma isikhathi eside. I'm given 5 minutes and I'll stick to that. I'll equal my height. When we're talking about poverty, how can I describe it? I'll describe it as, I once asked a black man, what do you want to become when you completed your matric or you've completed your degree? Said that I want to work for a company. I wanted to work, but it's a question from a black man to a black man. But when you ask a white kid,
a white child, what do you want to become after completing matric? They will definitely tell you, I want to own a company. Nkhuluma manga. Nkhuluma manga. Good people, chairperson, let us be honest. Let us start to say to ourselves, we need to work together to develop a child. Our very strong foundation that we need to build is to say to ourselves, from the primary school to the high schools, that we need to teach our black kids to be independent, to start their own businesses, start their own companies. I will then look at the people living with disability. My input would be that, without any waste of time, I would like to say to people, let us hire more sign language interpreters in our schools. Let us hire more people living with physical disabled. Let us hire more people who are blind in our schools, our so special, the special schools. Last factor under poverty, it's the right things going to the wrong people. You get the houses that are built for wheelchair users, you find people without disability, they are owning those houses. I don't know, it's corruption or it's what, but you'll state it, you'll analyze and see how do you call it. Chair, I'll then now move to the unemployment. Many of our people in the city of Uruleni and other cities, they are unemployed. I asked myself as a person living with disability, getting a disability grant, how do these young people cope in their daily lives? They complete matrics, they complete grade 12, after that they need to go to tertiary. Not so long, these young people across our country, they were fighting for the fees must fall. These people, they are saying that in order for them to be employed, they need the government and the other stakeholders, because it's not only the government, the companies should invest in our education. We should say now is time for the government and the stakeholders to implement fees must fall. Isn't it so? Akunjalo. Good people, we have the so-called the special schools, but we don't have the special university. The people living with disabilities have much barriers than before. The universities are not user-friendly. The people who are totally blind, they do not have those assistive devices that they need. And also the devs, they are struggling. Going again to the last factor, which is inequality. How can I put inequality? I can say we need to start now and say that we need to put more people, young people, give them more skills so that they can improve their lives, and so that they can better their lives of their family, the spouse, the people that they're living with. But I would like to leave you with one quote. Bab Simlangeni said to me, Bab Madela, we need to be honest to ourselves. Stick to what you know that will work for you. Uma ngabe uyacula, bambelele emculweni. Uma ngabe uyazi ukuthi isikolo into yakho hlala esikolweni. But abantu bakithi bathanda izinto ekungasizabo. Umuntu athi uyacula, mawuthi uyamamela ngathi uyakhala ungazi ukuthi ushaye ubani. Let us stick kulezi zinto kungezethu. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Chairperson of the panel, Honorable Khalima Mutlante, all the panel, Program Director, allow me to say
all protocol observed. As much as we're given the 5 minutes just to outline things that are pertaining to our society in challenges of the things that we are discussing today, I will do so. My name is Victor Lamile Jabane. I'm from the area called Johannesburg. Now, Johannesburg is a tourist area, far away in the rural areas. I believe that ours is a semi-rural in the sense that it's developing. But Professor has spoken some things that I think I'll just add upon, and the challenges that we might pick up from this group. Addressing the challenges that we have in terms of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, I'll just stipulate few that we have picked up. On the inequality, on wage inequality, we have discovered that there is actually a meeting that is held or a proceeding that has been taken addressing the issue of domestic and farm workers' wage or salaries. And the average is that 3.5, that is on the discussion. But we felt that as a group, even 3.5 is too little in terms of addressing this in the domestic and also as well as farm workers. Let me just give an example. If a domestic worker is working, let's say, a distance of maybe paying 110 per week or 120 per week, going to and from the work, now part of that salary is also taken to transport, so don't address the process. The other part that we have also looked at in terms of wage inequality is the issue of pay the differentials. The fact that the employer pays an employee more than what he's supposed to pay, or less than what he's supposed to pay, we found that sometimes it becomes to a discrimination. Some employees, or employers, so to say, are not adhering to what the government is saying they must do. So I think this one, we need to look at it on a very, very accurate manner. The other part is that also we discovered our foreign brothers, they are not banking. As a result, their money is staying under their mattresses. And because they are not banking, and their money is staying under the mattresses, therefore they are not contributing in the wealth of the country, in a sense. And the other part is that also our employees are still paying our people by envelopes. They are not introduced into bank systems or so. And they derive them the opportunity to have loans and also to exercise their rights in terms of doing the banking as far as it is concerned. The other part that we have also looked is that while our Somalians are not banking, they also benefit in terms of service delivery issues. Because you cannot just service the South Africans and leave them alone. They are in South Africa, and they are staying with us. So they are also partaking into our service delivery, which that is a problem to us. Now the question around there that we have addressed is that because of this inequality, we've found that there are protests that are happening, and there are also unfair labor practice that is happening. Also crime is guaranteed. But what measures can we put in place to address these issues? We then said we need or it must be a legislative law that must address this foreign brothers issue in terms of Bank Act 66 of 1990. It should be addressed. Fair labor practice also must be put in place. There must be a monitoring and evaluation team that must service or give service recruitment policies. On the issue of unemployment, I will then make some examples because these things are affecting us on daily basis. Again, our neighboring brothers, or should I say, we don't have actually a trade unionist or union that are talking to us as the working class in a proper manner. Why I'm saying this part is that some of our unionists are getting bribes. Therefore, they don't address our unemployment issues correctly. Gupta thing, you may call it. On the Income Tax Act 58 of 1962, we said the act is working for South Africans, but it also does cover the foreign brothers, as I indicated earlier. Then the questions that we find that we are getting in this regard is that on the issue of unemployment, we then have substance abuse, we have crime, high level of pregnancies, domestic violence, and high rate of poverty. That is what is happening when people are not employed or their lack of employment. Then we then said how to address this. This legislative law must be put in place rather than to be on the white paper. In other words, whatever that is being put on paper then must be put in practice. We said again, the more the low rate of unemployment, the more economy will therefore increase. On the tendering system, we also acknowledge that tendering system is not operating correctly. You then go to supply chain management, and you find that tenders are being given to brothers and sisters, or rather, to friends. And that is also must be looked at. We then said again, the law must also prohibit the foreigners to be paid a low salaries, or the employees must render the services according to Labor Relations Act. This one we then say, because of the I'm done.
Good afternoon to the stakeholders, presiding officers, traditional healers, and the House at large, all protocol observed. My name is Thando Makhubu, the chairperson of VT LGBTI, an activist of LGBTI sector, and a feminist. I believe that these acts that are implemented and created help the people and lawmakers to generate more wealth, but they were created and implemented for the people. The members of the society are still at an advantage, and their levels of standards of living are still not bettered. Levels of poverty are still on a high. Job opportunities available are requiring personnel that are skilled. The Skills Development Act 97 of 1998 is there to develop and improve the skills of the South African workforce. This act is really not working because there are still people who are unemployed because of lack of skills. Why not implement a law that gives skills from institutions of high-level education, which is tertiary institutions? In South Africa, we still have old people that are not educated, but there is an act called Adult Education and Training Act 52 of 2000. This act is there, but it is not known by the general public, especially looking at people from rural areas. Yes, the government has laws and acts implemented, but are these all easily accessible and known? The information about these acts made accessible for everyone. By everyone, I mean people from the rural areas to people from urban areas. There is also Companies Act 71 of 2008. It says the purpose of the act is mainly to provide matters related to incorporation, registration, organization, and management of companies. But members of the community who want to register their businesses and small, medium-term enterprises still need help from the act. There is also Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act 53 of 2003. This act was implemented to address inequalities in the country associated with the legacy of discrimination. Hence, it is not helping the ones who need to be helped, which are the citizens of the country. Is really the government doing something for us, or it is just portraying an image of them helping us as a community and society at large? Are they actually helping us to actually improve our standards of living, or are they actually helping themselves to generate more wealth and income? Thank you.
Good afternoon to the stakeholders, traditional healers, the presiding officers, and the House at large. I am Tsebiso. I am Tsebiso Munyimanyana from Beauty LGBTI. I'll be discussing about unemployment. South Africa's unemployment rate is relentlessly climbing a trend that shows no sign of abating. Statistics of South Africa, a government agency, said on November 22nd that the country's unemployment rate has risen from 27.1% to 27.1% from 26.6% in the second quarter of 2016. The highest it's been in 13 years. The Statistics Agency counted 5,873 million South Africans of working age without jobs. Even though the country saw some increase in employment, it was not enough to offset losses in struggling sectors like mining and agriculture, the domestic sector, which includes maids, such as domestic workers and gardeners. So they saw a quarterly decrease of 15,000 jobs. Job opportunities for South African young people are way below global average. With kids coming straight off school, the worst affected facing an unemployment rate of 65.5%. Those statistics include discouraged young job seekers who have given up trying to find jobs. Women also remain the most vulnerable to the forces of the labor market, especially women of color who mainly hold low-skilled jobs. Unemployment is still going to be a problem because we as citizens of South Africa are given book knowledge rather than skills. And it becomes a problem when looking for a job because employers are looking for applicants with experience and relevant skills to perform a specific job. Thank you.
Well, this concludes those who had registered interest for Working Group 1. We'll proceed with other groups, and then when we come back, we are going to open it for anyone from the floor who would want to raise their issues. And we also request that as people come and present here and they finish, they should go to the tables that side and register their details. We shall now move to organizations that recorded their interest for Working Group 2. We shall start with the King of Kings from the Weko Royal Kingdom, Sicele King Themba Solomon Mazibuko, to come and address us. on the land issue. And we also have Mpokalo, Mr. Tim Mazibuko, Agri Khapula, Reverend Thabo Kambita, and Mahlatse Tladi, if they can please come closer. Because we are live on TV, it looks bad when we have spaces that go silent in between. May I kindly request all those that I have called to come closer so that we have a speaker after a speaker. If you see me standing up when a speaker is in the podium, it's because their time is up, their time is exceeded. All that you will do is to help me by clapping hands to appreciate that speaker. And then the speaker will go and record their details and leave a copy of their submission there. Thank you very much. Over to you, King.
Bayete Sanbonane Khoyamore. Afternoon. Ke dumedise ba parlamente le teng bontate Kgalema Motlanthe kaofela, the former president, setjhaba sa Modimo se teng kwana. Ka lebitso ke le Maziboko, Kenya mo Gauteng. Ntho e nkgathatsang haholo e ke tlileng ka yona to discuss le presidente kaofela le ntlo. Ke dula motseng wane mo Vale, ke tleme Valdebiersfontein e qala mane Marikana fihla Union Building. Case ya teng e fedile 2014. Rona re le marena ga batho ba laolwang ke moya, the spirit. Hobane ka beuwa ke lehodimo. Jwale bothata ke thabile the parliament le teng le speaker sa Vale se le teng kwana. Go tloa 1950 motse ona o lwanelwa wa Gauteng kaofela Valdebiersfontein. Ke mo ntate a ngomaretsa mo claima lefatshe lena le kgutlele ho banga ba lona. Lefatshe lena ke le claimetse hore Modimo a re ke jwetse ba setjhaba sa hae se mo rapele hobane o ba file lona, bane lefatshe ke la marena le community. Jwale ntho ela e tsala ka from 1950 until now, Modimo wa lla hore nnete ha e so bue ka ga lefatshe le. Hobaneng batho ba shwelletse 1960 1975 ka lefatshe le. Hobane kaofela batho ba ne ba owner this land, title deed ya lefatshe lena ke ena. Lefatshe lena e sale re bua land commission o tloa Mr. Tate Mandela tshwaro fihlela apartheid le no. Ha le solo ko le khotho le winwe di order ke tse ke di tshwere. Jwale nka thaba haholo ha parliament ka nka case ena serious se ka nka, simply because batho ba sebedisitswe for lefatshe lena ba shwa from 1960. Modimo ba hlatswa madi a bona ka pula, ho sena motho ba ntse ba lefatshe lena le kgutlele ho banga ba lona. 1975 ape wa lona la Transvaal le kgutlele ho banga ba lona. Hona wa 10 o jwale title deed ya mona se 99 years lease as a freehold. Jwale re tlo kopa the former president ha mo le parliament ka ele kaofela o etsamaisa setjhaba sena. Ntate Mahlatse a etsamaisa ho tloa Ikuruleng ho fihla di mine re patala 8 rand, bonto 30 rand. Ho fihlela batho ba le ba tshwara bo ba vumela vilagasi ba tswa tronko le bo Thegalokota ba thuntsha batho ka 1984 ho fihlela ka lwana ho fihlela 11 years government ena e ba mo ka baka la title deed e ga kopa e khutlelo banga ba yona modimo o tshware ke jwetse the parliament e khutsitse lefatshe leo banga ba lona ka hore o tlo etsa ka tse tshosang ha ba sa efe bane lefatshe lena ke la setjhaba se ba yete
dumelang kaofela o a mo pela lena ke Mphokalo ko thoma pele ka o rata o dumedisa ke fitsa madume ho the former president and the leader of the panel Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe, and to all the members of the panel, media and everyone attending this this gathering. In relation to the Constitution, it is very clear that Section 25 stipulates that the government needs to create the laws that will help the people and the communities. However, it's quite unfortunate that some of those acts that are created by the government, referring to ESTA, Ultra, Ipilra, are not assisting some of our communities. Therefore, I will want to say to the panel, and moreover to Dr. Anika Klassen, that these acts, when they are drafted, they need to involve all communities or stakeholders, referring to mostly the people who have purchased or bought lands. Why I'm saying this is because when departments are doing consultations, they are not doing them properly. They only have what we call the researchers from the departments. It will assist the government to also have curators. Why I say this is because they have knowledge and understanding of the communities, where they come from, how the land was bought, and then all the information will be taken back to the department so that when they are dealing with their reports, it must be a clear report. The other thing is, we will suggest that not when they are doing the consultation, they need not to also relay the messages to our people, only the chiefs. They also need to consult with the people who bought the land. However, I clearly understand that some of the people have received their land, and the land issue is something that is very, very sensitive. We need to make sure that when we talk about the issue of land, we need to include all stakeholders. Lastly, I'll say, Mr. President, former President, it's of utmost importance that the department need not to isolate stakeholders. They need to make sure that they involved everyone. Finally, I will say to everyone involved in issues of land, land first, others shall follow. Ilizwe. Thank you.
Dumelang, lebitso la ka ke Thabo, Reverend Thabo Rampitsa. I'm from rural area, West Rand. As a leader, more rural area, we feel that land is a problem. A problem, in fact, because redula more whereby we see all the children bana bahulela under diplotong, diplasing on that environment. So when you come on that space as a pastor, as a leader, or tola that little plot. The hope yabana bahanu bahulelang under environment enu. They are in you. Any problem etlang huena etlang in the challenging batla huena. So therefore, we feel if the government can also allocate, church sites, more rural areas, it will assist because kereke is not only about the spiritual, it's also it's a home of hopeless people. People bana bahlokang any help but like kereking. For example, on a rural area you find that bana by skolong without any food. Although on the schools bonale something about tolang, but when they come back home, that situation whereby hauna anything elite. So we feel if we can look on that angle, government takes about that angle, or on that rural area, those leaders volunteering, they can have some decide timon, because also the church, the church side, not serving only spiritually, even the funerals that have been accommodated at church, even the meeting of the community on that rural area, even other services, telling on the rural area, because there's no area, there's no space, more baka tusalanting, they come to the church. So we feel that a land must also check on that angle. And also because also the rural area, the formal, informal settlement, more the rural area. Please, because Rebona didn't testing right. Those are the things that we feel that by a land, twenty speed up on the rural area. Kialebo.
Dumelang sanmonani khuyemore eita lekai bana beso re tswile ka lebitso ke mahlatsi tladi ke community leader ke tswa mo Sebokeng e welang under Sedibeng hona jwale as a district. I was born in Everton. Motsotsongwana jwale re na le NGO e bitsang monna wa motsamai wa tsela o iphidisa bophelong ba hosane ke lebitso la NGO. Bohololo re shebile ntlha tse nne tse re batlang ka karolo ka ra tsona go ya ka puso. Programa ya pele e re shebileng ke di skills go ruta bana ba qetileng dikolong ba tseba bala ba batlang mesebetsi. Ya bobedi re shebile di programa kaofela tse bolayang bofuma makoisheneng e re phelang ho ona. Ya boraro re shebile haholo thuto, education, o ka assista ngwana o tloafatse go fihlela re mmea mo a ka kgona ho iketsetsa. Ya ho qetela ke entrepreneurship, ba batlang ho ithusa ka lesedi la di skills tse ba nang le tsona. Jwale se ntlisitse mona ke tlo buela interest yaka tlasa mokgatlo ke tswa hape Sedibeng. Ke khola ne kopa fela le address mo le understand ntle mo bana beso. Ha ke dumedise legislature, ke dumedise parliament ya rona ka boikokobetso, ke dumedisa moetapele wa rona e leng Ntate Motlanthe e re mo tsebang o ya kae o batla o ya kae. Ke dumedisa hape le panel ya hao kaofela Ntate Motlanthe o tsamayang le yona. Ke dumedisa hape le setjhaba se tlileng legislature. Ke re eita ya pele lefatshe, land. Ke nnete government e na le melao e beileng ha re bua ka lefatshe. Re a utlwisisa haholo And hape, re a elellwa, governmente e risa kae, hobane a se banana republic, mona re tsamaiswa ka molao. Ha ke re hape, tabeng ya lefatshe, ha re na thuto e batsi e tletseng. Diprograma tsa governmente ga di utlwisisa, di teng. Empa, seneneng, ha di tsamaye ka the way, re di batlang di tsamaye ka teng. Jwale ke kopa legislature, tse ke leboha, hore re batla hantle-ntle, hore tlamehile mang a etseng a ska etsang, hobane ho na le confusion. Ya bobedi, ke nnete, ke tsa melao ya etsuwa parlamenteng, re a utlwisisa, diprograma di teng. Jwale, tlasa maano e government e re fileng ona, e re a utlwisisang hape, ha re tsebe motsotsong wana jwale, ke mang a unang lefatshe. Hobane hona jwale, ha re batla ho tseba gore lefatshe le hantle-ntle, ke mang a le unang, re ba confused. Re le setjhaba, government re, diprograma kaofela, re tsamaye ka tsona, re a di support, hobane re a di utlwisisa. Jwale, ke kopa ho tseba, government na le programa ya willing and selling and buying agreement, kaofela ntho tseo, re batla ho di tseba, hobane ke tsamalo melao e Cape Town a kere. Jwale re tlo kopa hore ba re thuse le bona jeska le baemedi ba rone governmenteng. Ya bobedi, re shebile haholo di-skills. Re le mokgatlo o phelang le batho go tsa mathata, re batla ho kenya letsoho di-skillsing tsena tse teng tse government a buang ka tsona. You want to put effort haholo. And also, education, re batla bana ba hole ba tseba ha bua ka land tenure, bua ka land distribution. Ntho tsa kaofela se ke tsa tseba ke nna, ba di tsebe, go se ke etsa diphoso ho sana. E bohlokwa haholo, re a elellwa government na le di-programs tse ntle, very good. We understand those programs. Ho thusa ho balisa poverty alleviation, re ska ba teng, re understand that teng. Empa di felella somewhere nowhere. And jwale re no, re le rona batho ba ikemiseditseng, re batla ba part ya re why re sa etse so, re etsa so. Jwale ya o qetela motsamaisi wa mosebetsi se ke nka nako ya hao. Farming, ho na le a rural development session which I attended. I was happy with that session. They gave us everything, the do and don'ts, the issue, which I think is very common, Mr. MC, very, very important. And I want to put to you as a challenge, the buying and selling of land, the lease agreement. We want workshops on those issues. We want to understand very clearly what they mean to all of us. Thank you.
We truly humbly request that people who are going to speak, not to allow space between the speakers. Please.
Dumelang, nna ke Agrigapola, ke delegate ke setjhaba sa Gauteng gore ke tle ke ba bolelle le hono mona legislature. Ke tlo bolela mabapi le act ya land in South Africa. Ho ka lebella go tloga morago kwa ka bo 18th centuries. Makgowa ga ba tsena ka mo South Africa. Grupo ya bo Jan van Riebeeck, Bartholomew Dias, Moses Sisi. Aba tsena ka mo South Africa, mo la Cape Town. A senke ba khopela magoshi a rena go ba rena setšhaba sa batho ba bantsho. Ba invetile our land. Mohlomongwe o mong a ka shumisa lentswe la trespassing. A go na le motho a go ba charger for go trespassa our country, South Africa. The wise. Ho ka sheba ko nageng tša ko ntle kwa bo Europe, more especially Britain. Go England, Queen Elizabeth o ona lentela. A gona le motho o montsho I interrupt Mola. And in Britain, there's no black woman or black man own mine or farm. But Sheba in South Africa, so many whites own mines and farms, not blacks, in their own land, South Africa. Oshebe, Element 6, Anglophile, Anglo-Americans, the company own the mine, Kija Mahua, Vanabaga Harry Oppenheimer. Not Vanabas Kukune, or Shaka, or Kininza, or King Sivasa, or King Ngunyane of Amazon. And the Tawaya land is very much complicated issue. But who understand, but diamond telinga fast as a gold le oil, le platinum. Kiara Heru Oppenheimer. Sheba, Litava ya townships. Kintwe it design no Kamahuaba Zenagamo. I saw design no blacks. But Hoban so come South Africa. Oshebe Soweto, of course, yes, is the biggest township in Africa. We agree so. It design no Kamahua for what Hobans were Robalo Soweto in the morning, Bature, Batwaverkel Hua Johannesburg. Alexander, it is a Negamahua, Fatsur in the morning, Favereke Vas, Titoi, Kwasante. Guatema, it is a Negamahua, or Mutum Zarovalgotema, or Senga Ture, Aver America Springs, etc. Aukasheva from 1994, ANC Inga government from the previous apartheid government in South Africa. Me, I'm not a politician, and I'm not a member of any political party in South Africa, but I'm a community activist in South Africa. I was hoping that for 1994, the ANC in government would for the past 22 years, ANC governor South Africa. I don't see any change. I go on a black person's life in improve. Instead, we go on a life. Ya mutuemusa own a land, own a mine. Who is oppressed by the very ANC. What I'm experiencing is the corruption, that's all. One other painful thing, the present government ruling party in South Africa, the councillor or a mayor or state president, immediately elect, what why our mayors, our councillors, our state presidents, our director generals, MECs, etc. But for quality township in Bailula, Mahwakwa, Ribonia, Santen, Rus Penkena, why about Tola Kotas, Tenko Township? Why was a little in our qualification? Land administration, the township in Gauteng province. After every 3 streets, I'm a researcher too. After every 3 streets in township, Otola sports ground, of which is good, I'm not against. Why not art centers? Why government is a care artist or a piece of land banana? But when I counted in the football, can you right? Yes, of course. Right. What I want was Titoid. Avelili farms J20 in South Africa. Hapola Adulekum Kukum, Kopisnya Ninganya land. What I want was Skuman. Aveli 60 hectares, yadi farms. Hapola Ulujim Kukum land. To save time, Galibo.
Thank you very much, Tate Agre. Well, we expected the speaker from Lamosa, from Sidibeng, Tima Zibuko, who is not here. We shall now move to those who declared interest of engaging in Working Group 3. And we shall start with Ms. Roshan Tadu. Is she here? Not here. Do we have Mr. Magic Nkwashu? Please come. And we also wish to invite the other speakers to come closer. Mr. Kombumluana, Lam Makua from Ekuruleni, Khama Walter from West Rand, Muketi Sifume from Sidibeng. Can they also come closer? Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Program Director. All protocol observed. My name is Magic Nkwashu. I'm not about to perform any tricks. I am representing Joburg Disability Forum. It is a forum which consists of organizations for and of people with disabilities within the city of Greater Johannesburg. It was formed way back in 2000, on the 3rd of December 2008. We are meeting here today as we observe the month of disability from the 3rd of November leading towards the 3rd of December, which is an International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Unfortunately, as people with disabilities, we still face many challenges nationally. There remains challenges despite having proper legislation from the Constitution itself, which came into effect in 1996. Clearly, Chapter 2, the Bill of Rights, identify people with disabilities, and this was not the case prior 1994. Subsequent to that, we did get the INDS, which is the Integrated National Disability Strategy. With that, we had an office on the status of people with disabilities, which was based in the office of the president, then Nelson Mandela, and former Deputy President Thabo Mbeki. It was his duty when the INDS was actually housed in his office in 1997. Then we had also office on the status of disabled people in all provincial offices at the Premier's office level. At the Mayor's office, there were disability desks and so on. But I must say that everything seems to have reversed in terms of people with disabilities where we stand now. We know that now, after the first administration, the current administration, in its first tenure, disability was included within the Ministry of Women, Children, and People with Disabilities. It was just included. It was not meaning that issues of people with disabilities were given proper consideration. Now, as we speak, disability is taken to social development, where it's headed by the Deputy Minister, who happened to be a visually impaired person herself, Ms. Henrietta Bukopane Zulu. And it's an insult to people with disabilities because it's almost saying, go to social development, go to SASSA, go and get disability grants, which we know it's 1,500 rand as we speak. Just go and get the grants, forget about employment, forget about economic empowerment. The life of a person with a disability is generally costly. We can see people with disabilities using motorized wheelchair, which unfortunately, despite having free basic health care, our Department of Health is failing to cater for the needs of people with disabilities. There are different types of disability. In fact, when we talk about people with disabilities, what we always say is that we've got two types of people in society. You've got people with disabilities and not yet people with disabilities, because disability is something that will happen to anyone at any time. You might be born with or acquire it later in life. So what we are calling for is universal access that will cater for the needs of people with disabilities, be it at transport, where you know you've got taxis, you've got buses, you've got trains, you've got aeroplanes, which unfortunately very limited transport modes are able to cater for the needs of people with disabilities. Even public places like this one, it's still a challenge for people with disabilities to be catered for. When you talk about triple challenges facing our society, we talk about quadruple challenges, because in addition to the high unemployment rate of people with disabilities, the inequality, the poverty level, discrimination still continue ravaging people with disabilities wherever they are. Although we have high numbers of people with disabilities in our community who happen to be our own brothers, sisters, mothers, cousins, colleagues. So we have them everywhere, but they continue to face discrimination. Unfortunately, we have disability given consideration within government. We've got people who are representing us in other sectors, but they are failing us. They have forgotten where they come from. Whenever they are, they're up there. We've got MPs. You can talk about National Skills Authority, NEDLEC, everywhere they are. It's just that in the panel, I don't see a person with a disability. I'm not sure, probably it could be an indication, because one thing is, we always say nothing about us without us. There's likely mistakes that will be made if people with disabilities are not included. I've got a lot to say, but because of limited time, I was informed to prepare for 9 minutes, but it was reduced here this morning. It's 4 minutes. But I will give a presentation with full details. But we request government in all spheres. You talk about national, you talk about provincial, you talk about local. There need to be synergy in ensuring that people with disabilities are catered for. And disability shouldn't only be considered from the 3rd of November to the 3rd of December, as if disability take leave from people with disabilities on the other days. So we request really that all stakeholders, government, private sector, we need to come together and ensure that issues of people with disabilities are taken into consideration, not talk about them theoretically, but practically doing them. Because we don't complain about the policies and the legislation that are in place, but implementation remains a problem. People cannot eat policy, people cannot eat legislation. They need practical things that will help them. I thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable panelists and honorable guests and people in the house, Diabulisa. I'm going to run through a presentation and it was Nandivela from Commission for Gender Equality. Isizathu sokuthi size la nathi sizobeka eyethu ingcinga nokubona kwethu ukuthi izinto zihamba njani eMzansi Afrika ngo-2016. Okokuqala, i-CGE is based on the Constitution of South Africa. Kuthiwe ke singathethi nge-preamble. Kodwa kubalekile ukukhumbuzana that i-Constitution yethu is 20 years. And sizwileke this morning ukuthi emsebenzini wethu njenge chapter 9 Constitution zininzi i-challenges eziboniweyo. In terms of social cohesion and nation building, our problem statement is this one. Besides the ones ezibekweyo, South Africa is starting to have a trust deficit. And therefore, let trust deficit yenza ukuthi thina chapter 9 masenza umsebenzi wethu in communities. People will tell you that you tell me about gender equality when I'm hungry. I also want to get food. I don't care about gender equality. And people will tell you that you are telling us about this constitution. Meanwhile, we have such high inequalities as were articulated this morning. And therefore, we have a problem of goodwill in terms of this constitution. The question we keep asking people is, the constitution talk about equality in terms of section 9.3, different types, non-sexism, that were all equal, njoba sihleli up. People are saying we are not equal. In South Africa, an African woman, the question is an African woman in a rural area, in a traditional area, treated the same as a white woman in Sandton, as someone was saying? And at the CGE, we have seen, and in our hearings, we are getting feedback that people are feeling that there is high inequality. The answer is, we have the laws, but the goodwill on the constitution is no longer there because people don't trust this constitution. Here are other areas that we want to quickly run through. We want to propose that marriage legislation, that Parliament goes back on marriage legislation. In a rural area, in terms of customary marriage, a 16-year-old, if the elders decide, may get married. And yet, in another law, in fact, if you are less than 16, you can even get married if the elders decide. In the marriage laws, based on amakhosikazi ephepha, the marriage with a paper, you can only get married at 18. And then we have Muslim marriages and Hindu marriages. We are asked, don't touch that area, it is a private space. And we argue, if the constitution is supreme, why are there areas where we must not enter and talk simply because they are religious, they are traditional? We are asking that question because women are asking us those questions. We also know that there is a Civil Union Act. We are asking that all those acts must come under one Marriage Act that is regulated in exactly the same way with regulations that will explain different permutations. In terms of healthcare rights, as already has been mentioned by, I think, group number 1, we are receiving lots of issues around medical schemes, those who have access to medical schemes, in terms of how women who have cancer, for instance, just to give one example, when they want to, they've been cut, their breasts have been cut, the medical aid doesn't pay for artificial limbs and artificial breasts that they get. And I'm sure persons with disability would say the same with issues of artificial limbs and access to medical aid payments. In terms of land ownership, it's a big question. Do women have rights to land? And we have found that depending on where you stay, there is no uniform way in which women are treated. And women are saying to us as the Commission for Gender Equality, in traditional areas, we don't have equal rights to land. We have made a proposal to Parliament that at least let's talk about 1 hectare, 1 woman in terms of across the country to make sure at least women have access to 1 hectare of land to feed their families, whether they are married or not, so that then even when they divorce, they can still have a piece of land for themselves. Other pieces of legislation to run quickly. National Credit Act was a good act. It was mentioned this morning. There are acts which are passed in good faith, and then they have unintended consequences in that now people are not able to get credit even when they need credit because of the economic climate. So the issue is, what checks and balances can we put for women and for people in terms of promoting equality in that one? Bank charges is a big one that the National Consumer Protection Act are some of those acts that were passed in good faith, but now there is a problem in terms of consumers being protected, especially the poor. Women having access to finance and also having to provide security when they start small projects. Running through the other issues that we have raised are amendment to taxation. We accept the fact that people that have must be taxed, but we want to put on the table as well that especially in African communities, the amount of money you earn must not be judged as the amount of money that a family earns. We have found that a family, if this family earns above the threshold, they are taxed like they are a unitary family. Meanwhile, in an African tradition, you support many people in the household. How can that be put in a legislation to make sure the so-called black test is taken into consideration? The CGE and many others were disappointed that the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill was stopped in Parliament, and we still want to know how we can promote equality if we do not have a bill that proposes that. We are mindful as well that the Traditional Acts Bill is coming back, and we would like parliamentarians to be mindful that what we have been told by the sector we serve is that that may not stand the time of the constitutionality. Lastly, The issue of the hate crimes bill, we support it, especially in as far as we have found that albinos are being killed in the name of culture. We have also found a lot of hatred on social media, but also the LGBTI community as a sector we serve has told us that they want a bill that will protect them from hatred from those who do it in the name of culture. Lastly, from the Commission for Gender Equality, we have already proposed to Parliament the amendment of the legislation to give us more teeth so that those who don't comply with the Constitution, we are able to do something about it. Thank you.
Sanbonani, Ninjani, Lina Lagakin Tabiseng Makua, Kitumeka Lamo, Mpidiseka Lamo Warra. Kitswa ko tema ko kuruleng ki rumilwe ki tema le kuruleng Chair ku group 3 zocela ukuthetha no judge ku Gender Act 17 of 2013 ku gender equality. Yes, we talk about ukuthi abesimame babonakale ba improve ezindaweni zokuhlala nako konke, but masithi sabheke emisebenzini nasemafemini nakuma position high cha abakatholakala, kusho khona ukuthi kusashoda kakhulu. Sibuye futhi sicheke na ku gender kulapho ku gender equality ukuthi ebesimame iabuse isesekhona kakhulu, so kusho khona ukuthi kudingeka okuningi ukuthi kusebenziwe lapho. Then is also include ne LGBTI, which is lesbian, gays, bisexual, transgendered, intersex. I'm one of them. Lesbian bafowethu ne. So ngihlala nentombi yami. I'm not available ne. So kodwa mara i-challenges sesenasi saface i-hate crime. And then when it comes to my job opportunities, we don't have. Because kaloku mandiya ku interview mele ngigcoke iskate nekwayikwai kanti nangibona ngumjida. So obvious I'll be penny every day. So Judge Pila, ama suggestion now ukuthi singathanda kakhulu masingabona ama officials wethu a responda kulama issues when there's a call for them, meaning that they must do their job. It can't be ukuthi ube nama cases wabo ma rape angasolve or abuse ingasolve ithathwe kalula. Kusho khona nje ukuthi abesifazane soze babe confident bona themselves as long basa experience lezinto. Meaning that thoroughly monitoring iyadingeka. It must take place. And konke lokhu kungancotshwa yini ukuthi more empowerment is needed. Maybe it's needed from the early stage. Umntwana sesesikolweni. Umntwana umfana fundiswe ukuthi intombi iphathwa kanjani. Umama uphathwa kanjani. Khona le subject ebizwa esikolweni ekuthiwa bathi LO. I think it's life orientation, if I'm not mistaken. So, isubmission yethu lapho sithi mayiqale lapho bafundiswe ingane not only babafana but nabamantombazana futhi ukuthi discrimination ne-stigma against LGBTI must end. And that is the only way it's going to end, from early stage. Not yona kuphela, sign language. Nami ngiyawisha ukuthi ngabe ngiyayazi. So if ingane zethu singafunda lokho futhi, ngiyantshela nini, le democracy izoba yiyo amampela. Then the second one, go Act 120 of 1998, the recognition of customary marriage, which is umphakathi yethu ayikayazi lutho ngaloko. Futhi maybe abazi nokuthi kusho ukuthini. Meaning ngamanye amagama kudingeka a lot of empowerment kumphakathi wethu ngoba bomama abaningi la bayahlukumezeka. Uzohlala emzini angazi kodwa abuyele kibo nempahla zakhe zodwa. Ibe bakasemshadweni sonke lesikhathi ngenxa ukuthi angazi umthetho. Engingakhulumi ngaloko kuphela. Kunama LGBTI akukhulunywa ngawo. Nawu mina intombi yami sina 5 years isihleli. Sisobabili. Mangishona kuzoyenzakalani ngaye? What will we happen guys ngaye? Mina ngikusho khona ukuthi uyobuyela emuva. La vela khona. Ngithi angaphethanga nespoon sakwakhe. So meaning that a lot of empowerment is needed to our families, communities, and also no government to make sure that those officials as Genalapa, they know how to implement this job. They know their duties. Ngiyaku Act here, Public Protector, Act 23 of 1994. Ukhuluma inyani nje lapho ukuthetha inyani cha. Ukhuluma nami ungitshela nge-public protector. Nami kwasamina ngulamo ngumthabise ngwakamaku. Angi understand mina ngibona idlalela kuma high profile. Meaning idila nabo nkokheli lapha bo ama president nako konke. Elokishini yeza na ngoba khona abantu abayenza izinto ezi-wrong kuma communities wethu. Abangayenza izinto ngendlela efanele. Kodwa sizoyapi ngoba sazi. Please singacela ukwazi lapho and mangabe kune access yaloko sicela ukuthi abantu bomphakathi bafundiswe so that they will have the access yaloko. Sibuye saku Sport Act. Ku Act 110 of 1998. Ku National Sport and Recreation. Mangikhumbula kahle ngo-1995 amabhokobhoko they won the World Cup. Ngo-1996 abafana, which is abafana, they won ICAF. Ngo-2010 la eMzansi South Africa sesiyahosta i-World Cup. And zonke lama event mawayenzeka siye sabamunye sabambana so umhlophe umnyama religiously, culturally and racial. So kusho khona ukuthi sport siyadingeka ukuthi basi recognize. Nginamadoda amabili engihamba nawo la uSaki noDali uXolo. They are one of the people kule country yethu abazama ukwenza initiator noku-establish ama program for ingane ku sport na ku recreation. So mabacela usizo azange balifumana. Na namhlanje azange babe ne respond yokuthi bafeyile kuphi ku application yabo or yini le bashoda ngayo abanakwanga maybe application yeni madodi wele dustbin. Azange ifike la bekumele ifike khona. So meaning that there's no access. And as long ungana access kusho khona ukuthi ingane zethu sisazongena kunyawupe. Kusho khona ukuthi sisazophuza utshwala. Kusho khona nje ukuthi bazosikhipa isithukuthezi ngecansi, ngesex. And sizoba nama teenage pregnancy angapheli. So bakithi nabakhulu, I hope nizwile. Ngiyabonga.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sizo Musito. I'm from West Rand, Johannesburg, Ward 31. Ours is simple and straight to the point. I won't maybe take much of the time. When we go to this thing of Gender Act, when speaking of gender, we still don't have gender equality exercised in the workplaces, e.g., a qualified female candidate will always be subjected into second command, even though they are more qualified than male candidates, despite what the Act 41 of 2003. You find that in certain areas, legitimate females who are supposed to take over the reins of the kings, they are denied the opportunity to lead. Monitoring and evaluation the stipulated acts, we are lobbying the government institutions, particularly the National House of Traditional Healers. Backlog of cultural activities and facilities to address the issue of moral regenerations. Creation of heritage sites and the level of community, like being taught of your own mother tongue or culture. Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities Act of 2002. Language Act, Pan South African Language Board Act 59 of 1995. If people of different languages are involved in the same institution, you find that some from a particular culture and language want to dominate others from different cultures. E.g., let's say you find maybe the Zulu tribe, whenever maybe let's say their number is working here in legislature, they will group themselves. Whatever they are guided by their number. If their number is larger than Batwa Batswana, they will want to govern the place. And then we need to make funds available to social cohesion programs. This year we are here with a youth parliament, and we raised issues to our facilitators, even ourselves. We ask that whenever you are calling us to come here as the youth, it's only us, black people. We don't see Indian people, we don't see white people participating. It's only us, black people, raising our crisis for our black communities. But we don't see white people coming in numbers, coming to state their own problems. Indian people, we don't see them coming to state their own problems. Moving on, even it happens whenever the state, for example, the council is calling a public meeting, you find that it's only black people from that community that are attending those meetings. You don't find white people who are residing in that place attending those meetings. You'll find them, maybe they are attending the meetings, their own meetings at Wimpy, without even, integrating with us, black people. And then the other thing that I would like to urge to all government officials, if you really want to end this thing, this barrier of social cohesion, I think all the officials, all your children, you must not stop sending them to private schools. I think it's high time now you should send them back to township schools so that you can improve those township schools. Even yourselves, you must go don't go to a private clinic or private hospital. Go to that public clinic, public hospital. So that the money that you earn from the government circulates within the government spheres. Don't feed the private sector with the money that you get from the government, you feed in the private sector. The private sector is the minority, while the majority suffers. So we are pleading with you, government officials. And the other thing, the last point that I want to make is that for its social cohesion, people are always moving. You find people from Limpopo, they are residing in Gauteng. So we therefore call on the government, in every schools, let there be all 11 official languages, or perhaps 12 with sign languages. So that umuntu ophuma eLimpopo mayeza ngapha eGauteng akhona ukuthola iSpedi sifundiswa la eGauteng. A person from KZN maya eRustenburg akhona ukuthola isiZulu sifundiswa laphana eRustenburg. Thank you.
Ona ka lebitso ke mokgethi ke tsibulo la ntate kopano le memageo ke tswa zone 7 fatsheng lane ne la Everton Sebokeng. The speakers that spoken before me have said a mouthful. I decided to speak from the heart. It was not long ago I went with the woman in my life and we found out that we are pregnant. And again we went, we found out that we are expecting a girl. And then I start thinking, oh Lord, in South Africa, there's a high level rate of rapes. And then I wonder, what is going to happen? And then I listen on the news. I hear in some countries, such a thing can be a death penalty. And then we come here, we devise all these acts and we talk about them. And then these acts are presented before the panel, a panel of educated people, of leaders who championed the revolution, some of them the likes of the former president, Kgalema Motlanthe. And then I might ask, could any of them have their children studying overseas? And then if any of them can say yes, then I will ask, why? Could they be taking their kids to run away from all these crimes in South Africa? Could those who are driven by kleptocracy be taking their kids to run away from this high rate of rape in South Africa? Then I'm like, oh God, I don't have the money to do so. Then what do you do when you found out that a leader you elected is driven by kleptocracy, self-interest? I come from a community in Sebokeng where now it is during December time. Initiation schools are going to start. And year after year, people die. But these days it is even worse in Sebokeng. They cut your head live. In Sebokeng these days, when the time of initiation schools come, we get worried. You can't only tell your child to stay in the house and be in the house within 6 o'clock at least. They come and take your child in your own house. What else are we going to do here? There are acts on cultural promotion, acts on the promotion of culture. then you ask yourself, for how long are we going to be debating this act? Some of you might remember one of our own beautiful women traveled to China and she was found with drugs. She was killed in China, trafficking drugs. And then in South Africa, a person is taken to jail and the parents of those who have, the parents or any tax-paying people in South Africa are the ones who are going to feed that particular rapist, that particular trafficker in jail. For how long are we going to be devising all these acts? Then we ask a question between us talking about this act and the role of political parties with their policies. I hear there's a huge debate about land. Then you take it from the political point of view. You found that this political party is saying this one position, the other is putting another position. And then the panel takes all this, they put them, and then they put them in on a black and white. They are going to govern. And then what else should we do? It is painful. It is painful. Okay, just a minute. I'm still within time.
Kancane nje, we're closer to lunch. He is exactly in 4 minutes, so he's still within time. Let's allow him to conclude. Thank you very much.
Okay, it is my last point. Because I decided not to go far on quoting from the acts because I do not want to spoil many of the matters that have been raised. But I thought I speak from in your different respective areas where you find challenges that the leaders that we elected and trusted cannot resolve. The proliferation of our mindset have been proliferated by the media with negative effects of people who are corrupting government, who are looting to the core. And yet we have to sit here. We don't have powers. Some of us will have to have money to fight some of the indiscipline that the leaders are doing. I submit.
Hi, the House. I want to talk about social cohesion. Social cohesion, as one, Walter Kama from West Rand. To make it in short, nation building is very important for the development of our country, peace as harmony, and also according to our communities. I'm going to state the facts for the challenges that we are facing through our communities. Free volunteerism, lack of insight of the national policy, improper discussions on the national youth policy so that we can actively involve in our communities. Reports to discuss that we come from across correlation of education and influence of Western culture, absence no role players and stakeholders, holding information, nepotism, no follow-ups from government in information they conveyed, no proper coordination in the intergovernment programs, no proper platforms in youth dialogues, sense of individuals, lack of development due to inefficiency or limited resources. People. limited adverts and programs of the youth activities on media, lack of oversized government programs. I have only two questions that I need to, I might say three questions that I might ask. Which structures create those policies? How do we hammer the economic divide? How do we make sure we forge the relation with other different sectors of society? As a leader from my community, we have, what can I say? Thank you, ma'am. I might say things that may make social cohesion be active in our communities. Promoting social cohesion amongst youth through different activities in our communities that we can partake through, like, let's say, there are MPOs that have taken part to teach more people about social cohesion, but there are no funds for them that they can teach more outside there. Concept of education where we can be able to pledge back to the community and advancement. Delegation to any gathering reports and externally to the community. Transparency without checking any political affiliation and the government. Follow up to the government to information they conveyed on ground level. A concrete development of youth strategies in municipalities. Direct link between the youth and government, creation of MPOs. Information pamphlets should be made, strategic position for any easy access to the communities. Creation of advisory centers. Programs should be categorized by age. Invite Parliament representative in every function we have in our communities should also be there, please. Computer central and Wi-Fi should be central. Race and disability should be represented in any gathering, since we speak of social cohesion. Access to mainstream economy should be made. Creating proper youth dialogues to discuss policies and activities. Utilizing social networks to disseminate information, since we are a technology implemented always, sorry for that. Always volunteer respectively of a salary. Relevant stakeholders should be invited in every programs that are run in the community. Checking progress amongst each other, checking websites, page of any municipality or as whether they are updated or not updated. Attention from the government should not be selective and only be on to all when we closer to votes. Education, social, economic issues. Proper resources centers should be made more, especially to the people who are living in town and communities. Media adverts to progress, activities, and youth. Grooming kids at a tender age to partake in sporting activities and art and culture programs. I am leaving a program, a proposal here from Let the Nation Be Healed, which is it's a MPO project coming from the community that I come from. I'm going to leave it here, people, as a proof. Here's the proof. I need to submit it here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I just want to make this point that according to my list all people who had declared interest have spoken now. And we're not trying to turn people back because we have selected certain people who must speak and possibly told what to say. No. We choose to stick to the discipline of those who have been selected so that when we come back from lunch, you can raise your hand from here. You will be noted, given an opportunity to speak. And equally, those who have been turned back must appreciate the fact that we must work, we must talk, we must listen, we must eat. And at this point, I want to thank you very much for all the cooperation in this session. This is the time when we go for lunch. I'm going to dismiss the panel and allow them to leave whilst we are seated, and invite Mr. Nombanda to come and make announcements about how lunch will be served. Please, Mr. Nombanda, do indicate the time by when people must be back seated so that we start. Siyabonga.
Okay, sanibonani. As abantu bepanel besiya kwi-lunch, ndicela si remain seated. Then I will be making announcements very shortly. Thank you. Okay. The announcements are as follows. One, members of the media, you are kindly requested to remain behind for a press briefing. Members of the media, you are kindly requested to remain behind as members of the public will be going out for lunch. And then in terms of umphakathi, ndicela aba bantu bahleli on my right hand side, bazaphuma ku exit door number 2, this exit door, and ibe ngaba bantu banxibe i-bands esandleni. Bangiphume kulomnyango bazawuseva ukudla abangaphandle, and then they will come back from the minyango engasemva. And then the people who are sitting on my left hand side, baphume kula exit door number 1, 2, 3, 4, that exit door at the back. Nakhona bazawuseva, and then bamove to the back, babuye bazongena bahlale ezindaweni zabo. Number 3, members of the stakeholders who are wearing the accreditation, bona, they will move to second floor. They are going to be served lunch in second floor. Yeah, and then we will be back again to continue with the public hearing exactly at 2:30. The time now is 1:30, so we will be here at 2:30. Thank you very much. Can we please be punctual? Oh, members of the media, can you please move to the holding room where the press briefing is going to be taking place? After your members of the media, after the press briefing, you will also move to second floor for lunch.
Only God knows how long it will take for me to reach my destiny. Only God knows how long it will take for me to reach my destiny. Everything may be rushing on me, and everything may be too slow on me, but I'll be here holding
I don't know what he's talking about till I saw on TV later. I had my legs parted. And
Okay.
on TV.
So,
Ever since then, I'm very aware.
yes.
You see, their cameras are low.
Yeah. Aniki. Anita.
Just leave the pack, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just leave it behind. That's perfect. Mhm. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's see what you did. Let me
Yeah.
help you. Since I just did it in Norway.
Yeah.
Right? And put it behind me on the settee.
This is chaos. This is
See how quick
chaotic.
that is?
This is
Are you going to
chaotic.
pin this?
Yeah.
How about the earring is not interfering?
It's, I don't know. Because these people should just ask us questions and come closer. They ask us questions, we answer. And we get it done with.
Yeah. It sounds firm now. It's your city.
No.
Not your city.
Cape Town.
All of you in Cape Town, eh?
They pulled a lot from Cape Town.
Yeah.
Not fair.
Not fair. You know, yeah, for years and years we used to say, if we don't go there, Natal will be left out. And that's true. Look at all the tourists. They don't even come there.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, they have a perception it's a violent place somewhere.
Yeah.
We're now wired up. I don't know whether we should engage in conversation or not.
Oh.
Or maybe they're still going to switch these things
Yeah,
on.
you have to be careful.
Yeah.
But in Norway, they switch it on so you can speak.
Thank you.
But yeah.
What?
Minutes maximum.
Yeah.
5 minutes talking to them about today.
Why don't we field questions?
You just want to go straight into questions.
Works better.
That's also
Yeah.
fine. That's also fine. Yeah. So we'll get her to do the background.
Okay,
She's doing the
that's fine.
background.
Perfect.
And then you
Perfect. Then we field questions here. Great. Hi. Thank you. In the past, I used to carry a camera with me, and when they are
Has the speaker got a
lined up
mic?
like this, I take.
You take their picture.
Yeah.
Well, she can have mine.
So I beat them to,
And then we can start.
to the draw. Yeah.
Well, there's that guy. I think it's
Yeah,
him.
and then those are special records.
Yes.
Yeah, because they behind the camera and
That's
you
true.
don't.
They never appear in any
Yes.
of the photos.
Once I was at Shaza University in United Arab Emirates, a men's university, but they brought a couple, about 20 women from that university in the corner, all in black. All you can see is that slit. When I walked out, they rushed down. Can they have a group photograph? What? How will they know who's who? They just left eyes. They don't even see.
They didn't remove the veil.
No, they didn't remove the veil. So now I hope you get it back.
I'm finished. Maybe no one will ask me a question. That'll be fine. This thing goes back to back.
This is very long time. This is.
I thought the propaganda people want us to have the labels. I don't know.
Yeah, this is
You never know. The propaganda people.
They won't bear anymore.
Well,
We think.
We just.
Where's the poster?
number 3.
Yeah.
Normally we take it off.
Yes.
Well, this is eaten a lot of. See, unlike you now, I've learned to raise my voice up for everyone. He's so courteous and polite.
So patient.
Yeah.
This is eating into our lunch.
Yeah.
Well.
It is.
Yes.
We could start.
You know, they could have been ready before we started. So how is the 2-day hearings working out? Better?
The 2 days are here.
I'm asking how the 2-day hearings are working out.
They work better.
They work better,
They
yeah.
work better. Particularly where you have many people with many issues. This morning we had, some of these people are motivational speakers and so on. So,
And to see how happy the crowd was when we were told it's your turn. Yes. Kept raising their hands.
additional mic, but they could have a. Okay. Yeah.
But it will be very short because, as you can see, there's a lot of work that's going on in the hall, so we don't have that much time. So after her presentation, we will go through to the panel and feel free to ask questions. Good afternoon, all. I'm going to reintroduce myself that I introduced already. I wish to actually introduce our former president of South Africa, who is the chair of this high panel team, Honorable Mutlante. Next to him, in fact, on the left-hand side, we have Dr. Klassen, who also chairs one of the working groups. I think when she speaks, she will speak on her working group. Then immediately on the right-hand side of our Honorable Mutlante is Judge Pillay. I'm sure we all know our judge. Then next to her is Mama Dr. Shisama, who's also chairing one of the panels. So each one of them are actually chairing one of the task teams or working groups, as we call them in the high panel. So basically, in terms of the National Speakers Forum, of which I'm part of the National Speakers Forum, as you are aware that legislatures and the parliaments, their mandates is to ensure that we make laws. Since 1994, there are a number of laws that were made, and the purpose of those laws was to change the lives of the people of South Africa. But unfortunately, as the speakers, as we're doing our assessment, we realize that every day or every month, many people come to our institutions either to demand this or that, or also requesting that as the public representatives who are assigned the task of lawmaking is to ensure that we also hold the executive accountable for some of those laws that were passed by parliaments. Then the bigger question was, are these laws helping or not helping our people? But we didn't have an answer at that stage. Then we said, no, let us have a panel, and you can see even the integrity or even the work that they do in their respective fields. They are champions in terms of these other issues. And we're worried about also the reports that are coming out to say quality of life of our people have not changed, or they've changed, with a small margin. Therefore, this is the investigation that we asked the panel to actually investigate for us. And investigating, they might not sit in boardrooms, but they needed to engage with the people of South Africa. They've gone to other provinces, and Gauteng is but one of those provinces that actually they are visiting, also to investigate why are people or the lives of our people have not changed, or what is it that people feel that in as much as they might have been helped, but what are the gaps, and what is it that they require us to actually look at so that we can change, and these laws must actually help them. At the end of their investigations, obviously the report will come to the National Speakers Forum, and will actually deliberate on the report, but also maybe take key decisions in terms of the report that is going to come to us. So let me hand over to Honorable Chair, who will actually take us through the process. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Speaker. You're free to ask questions of the panel. I think that's the best way to deal with it. We can go straight into that. Okay.
Good afternoon, Alvin Sampier from SABC TV News. This is a question that I put out to the entire panel, whoever's willing to answer it, that's okay. In terms of some of the remarks that were made, is the panel at all surprised the reaction to the NEDLEC's proposal that the minimum wage be set at 3.5? Are you all surprised by this reaction? Some not very happy with this minimum wage where it has been set, and does it correlate to some of the evidence that the high-level panel has been able to gather so far?
My name is Brian Mazibo from Independent Media. What I want to know, how this work is going to feed from other works which have been done in South Africa by the National Plan Development. And also one question I have in terms of members of the panel. I respect them, I'm not disrespecting them. I've seen one person who's young. I'm also not seeing young female. The mixture of it, because they must be there so that their experience, which also they've acquired. How are you going to gather that? Thanks.
Hi, Slee from Jacaranda FM. Anyone can answer this question. Just on the accessibility of this of these. Oh, Slee, Jacaranda FM News. The accessibility of these public hearings. A lot of people are at work between these hours. It's a Thursday. Exactly how constructive are these public hearings going to be?
I don't remember all the questions.
I'm Silver Fegeta from Power FM. My question is directed to the person who's on the working group or on land reform, and to you, former President. I just want to know, since this is the 5th provincial public hearing, and you've been hearing members of the public and stakeholders talking particularly about the unhappiness on the issue of land, and it's a serious issue in South Africa, the issue of land reform. I just want to know, what are some of the biggest problems that they have legislatively with the current piece of legislation in relation to how it actually frustrates maybe or accelerates the rate at which land reform actually takes place?
Is there one more?
Mine. Okay. Okay.
There you go.
Mine is on your expectation out of this intervention. 1, 2. Are we ever going to have black and white earning the same salary for the same job description? 3. In terms of wealth distribution, can you guys explain it further, because it's rather vague. On the land issue, we're having a backlog, a very bad backlog of RTP houses. Now, you're having people who are invading land, and when problem comes, you prioritize them to those particular houses. Whereas we have people from 1996 until, I don't know now, that still haven't got their houses. So how do you prioritize the issues that have been arising in that intervention? Because everything that was raised there, it is enshrined in the NDP of the country. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we'll leave it at that. And I would ask the panel to go ahead and answer the questions as they please.
Okay. Now, thank you for the questions. Let's start with the last question. This panel is not an extension of government. We are not in government. We're a panel of South African citizens that was, put together by the Speakers Forum to look into the impact of legislation passed since 1994 on the quality of life of South Africans. whether legislation serves as an enabler or an impediment, and therefore affects people negatively or positively. Ours is to listen, and once we are done with all these processes, because we call for submissions, written submissions from researchers, from stakeholders. Stakeholders are organized formations. We, over and above that, we interact with Chapter 9 institutions, and we access their reports. We'll also interact with the portfolio committees to access their reports as well. And at the end of it all, ours is to assess as to the impact and efficacy of legislation, and to then compile a report which would contain clear recommendations. For instance, if the impression at the end is that the land question has to be addressed by an omnibus legislation, Bamba Zonke type of legislation, then we would come out with that kind of recommendation. Because through our roundtables, we also hold roundtable discussions with experts and stakeholders and interested parties. So if, for instance, in some communities, particularly with regards to mining rights, many communities complain that their traditional leaders sign off agreements with mining companies, and they never get to see the benefits from the proceeds of those operations. So the point I'm trying to clarify up front is that we are not government. That must be clear up front, and that is why we've been asked by the Speakers Forum. The lawmakers, in other words, in South Africa, want to know that all these raft of laws that they've been passing, what is the impact thereof? Now, coming to the remarks made from the floor in the plenary now, we are not surprised that people are expressing unhappiness about the proposal on minimum wage. We expect that they give us feedback, very honest, candid feedback. That's what we expect from them, and to the extent that this may actually be a convincing pattern, we would also cover it in our final report. Yeah. I think I've covered 3 questions. Yeah, there's still one question.
Well, there are a few. So, of course, we have our own views, but the very fact that this panel, which we say is an independent panel of 17 persons, the very fact that we want to hear from the public or to tell you that we're not here to impose our own views. We want to hear the feedback from the public. And it's true, it's very limited, as one of you have raised. It's a weekday, we can't attract everybody. But we have extensive communication initiatives already. We are on community radios, we've called for submissions, so we want to reach as wide as possible a field of persons, including rural areas. So we're making every effort to ask people, if they can't reach us, to send us their written submissions or ask questions on the radio. That would be one, and what we're hearing is obviously people care about all their rights. You can't exercise the right to freedom or equality in gender if you don't have food in your stomach. So we are hearing people saying that they want delivery of all their rights that are enshrined in our Constitution.
Yeah. Perhaps I can say something with regard to the question of inequality as to whether will there be equality among the different races. the Constitution requires that there be equality. That is a given, in the Constitution. The question is the government, the private sector, organizations, institutions, and so forth ready to actually ensure that there is equality? I would say that from the government point of view, they've set up policies, laws, policies, and structures that are supposed to help to achieve equality. The question is it being implemented by all structures within the country? I do believe that we as South Africans, if we are prepared to ensure we have equality, all of us ought to be able to stand up and ensure that equality occurs. And we can do so clearly by ensuring that when we go to an educational institution, we demand good quality education, because the good quality education is a base upon which we can be able to compete, regardless of the race or the sex, the gender, or, locality. So if we have very good education, we ought to be able to compete equally. Data currently does show that there is a lot of inequality with regard to the quality of education that our people are actually getting. So I would argue that we all need to play a role. We cannot leave it up to government only. The government has passed the laws and policies, and programs are there, structures are there to monitor. Now it's up to us as a population to say, how do we ensure that our rights are actually respected? We've got to voice our concerns where we see inequality occurs. We have to play a role when we're employing people to ensure that we implement equality policies. So it's all up to us.
Maybe just to add on the question of land and the question about what are people saying about land. We've had a lot of people saying, as was said today, when the whites came, they didn't buy the land from us, so why should we have to compensate them to get the land back? So we've had broad questions of principle that address the legacy of dispossession and the inadequacy of current policy to really deal with that. But we've also had a lot of people coming and saying, I put in a claim to restitution, I've waited this many years, there's been no proper processing of my claim, or I put in a claim as a labor tenant, or I put in a claim as a farm worker. And so we're really looking at how specific laws have been implemented, how the budget for land reform has been spent, who it has benefited, and who's been left out, both in terms of class and race. And I think when we make recommendations, we're going to make them on the basis of specific findings about what's gone wrong in the implementation of the law, and where the gaps are in the law, and whether certain laws should be repealed. But it's also that comment that was made that these laws were meant to benefit the people, and the way they're being implemented benefits politicians rather than the people. I think we're hearing a lot of stuff like that as to where are the resources attached to these laws ending up compared with where they were intended to end up.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. My name is Cliff Shiko from Alex FM News. Madam Speaker, one would expect the Gauteng legislature to make thorough public participation like this of today. So my question would be like, were there public participation in all townships in Gauteng? And if so, if not, why so? And then Professor Clausen, the land question. As the panel, how are you going to make sure that the parliament speed up the process of land redistribution? Thank you.
Public participation is our mandate as a legislature, but also as parliaments. Maybe your specific question saying, have you gone to all the townships? We might not have gone to townships, but in terms of our public hearings and engagements, we normally invite stakeholders to wherever the venue that we are using, but we can still improve. We might have done it, but not enough. Where there are gaps, we need to ensure that we close those gaps and reach out to all the citizens of Gauteng. But maybe linked to your question is, what will happen to the report? I'm sure Honorable Mutlante has covered the issue to say they will bring a report to the National Speakers Forum. In the National Speakers Forum, we'll have to listen or take what is recommended to us and implement. At this stage, it is still premature to say what is it that we will do, but we will send to the report at the end of these particular engagements, so it will help us a bit.
Well, just to say that we are looking at making very targeted recommendations, not general recommendations. And there are a series of really difficult questions as to why land reform has been so slow. Some of them to do with the willing buyer, willing seller policy, and what amount of compensation should be paid, and why an expropriation law has not yet been enacted that actually deals with the provisions in the Constitution which say we don't need to pay market value compensation. But I think what we're doing through the various roundtables is breaking those issues up as to what does the Constitution provide, what doesn't it provide, and why has there not been more use of the provisions in the Constitution that allow land reform and better implementation of the laws that we have got. For example, we've got a law that any farmer who evicts a person unlawfully, that's a criminal offence, and yet we've had not one single prosecution of a farmer, but we've got many documented cases of unlawful eviction. So it's also questions of political will, and it's questions of the alignment of different parts of government, including the police.
Thank you very much, members of the media, for being here, and thank you to our esteemed panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow.
Let me use the word redistribution. The guy who asked you the question. Redistribution. You stayed at reform. Sorry. Once we commit ourselves.